On the surface, Gao Li had attacked them, but he had caused them no real harm. Instead, he had sent them all straight into Dormammu's territory. Caecilius and his men stared at him, faces drained of color. It wasn't just teleportation. They had been ripped into the heart of the dark dimension before they could even react. Caecilius' hand went to his mouth as he watched Gao Li smile. "I'm just sweeping up the trash so it's easier to clean later," Gao Li said, as if offering a courtesy. Caecilius' expression hardened. This was an enemy. His caution deepened, not least because the man standing before them seemed to manipulate space with a skill that outclassed even their own. Mages drew circles and stepped through portals every day. Being forcibly shifted across dimensions without warning was something else entirely. "Do you little fish still want to fight me?" Gao Li asked without looking at them. "Instead of wasting your overweening bravado here, you'd do better to pray about how you'll survive what comes next." "Survive what?" Caecilius managed, stunned. Gao Li's smile didn't change. A golden dragon ring, the ring of infinite magic, appeared on his finger. The air around him thickened. Magic flowed out of him like a living thing. Transform. Infinite power poured from Gao Li's soul and became a column of light that shot into the sky, bright enough to pierce half the dark dimension. He didn't negotiate with invaders of Earth. He intended to end Dormammu, to wipe the threat clean and send a message to any other dimension god who might try the same. Caecilius gaped. Even he, who had never imagined humans could challenge Dormammu, felt the raw terror of that light. The Ancient One had maintained a stalemate with Dormammu for years. She had bargained and kept the dark dimension at bay rather than fight it outright. Dormammu was unconquerable, or so Caecilius had believed. He had no framework for what he was seeing. The eruption of power shook the dark dimension. Dormammu himself felt it as a painful transgression, a magic so vast that even the ruler of that realm felt provoked. "What is this?" Dormammu rumbled, yellow pupils narrowing. The sensation of an unknown force tearing at his domain stung. No creature in my realm should have this power. A tremor ran through the viscera of the dark dimension. Dormammu's voice came out like frost, cold and cutting. "Is this a challenge?" The ruler feared rivals but could not ignore an affront in the moment he was preparing to invade Earth. The tendrils of that power were unlike anything Dormammu had met. It did not behave like other dimension gods. He could not tolerate the uncertainty. "I will go and see." Dormammu gathered his strength. Creatures across the dark dimension cowered when the tremor flashed through the void. Some fell prostrate before him, as if his command alone could keep them safe. Their fear fed his wrath. He summoned his servants, an army of horrors and phantoms, demons and ghost-like things, with eyes lit by fanatic worship. Together they surged toward the source of the light. The closer Dormammu approached, the more oppressive the magic grew. The landscape warped into void and blank cold. At the center stood a figure in armor, face hidden beneath a mask, radiating an authority that seemed to hold the dark dimension itself at bay. Dormammu felt a shock of recognition. This power exceeded his own. "Who are you, trespassing in my domain?" Dormammu's voice was a cavernous demand. "Why do you unleash such a force in my realm?" Gao Li lifted his head slowly. His voice was low, resolute. "I am the Endless Lord, the Guardian of Earth. Your dark dimension has invaded my territory. You will pay for that." The words lodged like a stone in Dormammu's core. Rumors had circulated among the dimension gods. A new power rising on Earth, one that had even defeated Odin. Dormammu's color shifted. He would not yield his authority. "Then you have invaded my domain. You cannot enter and leave my realm at will. There must be a price." Gao Li's smile was cold. "That depends on whether your strength can stop me." At once, Dormammu began to merge and consume. "Merge with me, my servants," he intoned, reaching out with the terrible, assimilating force of his being. Not just the denizens of the dark dimension, but Caecilius and the others screamed as Dormammu forced their essence into himself to swell his power. Dormammu became a mountain of shadow, a concentrated will that distorted space itself. The ripples of their clashing auras trembled through the void. Stars within that realm shook, space bent beneath their feet. "You dare fight me in my stronghold?" Dormammu thundered, and a dark storm answered, full of wailing phantoms and crushing intent. Within his territory, his power amplified. Dormammu had every confidence he would break this challenger. "It's simple," Gauli said calmly. "I judge myself stronger than you." Dormammu's roar rolled like an abyssal tide. "Why care for those tiny humans on Earth? Why should they matter more than me?" "At least more important than you," Gauli replied. The sentence hung in the darkness like a verdict. "Your time is running out. I said so." With that, the battle detonated. Dormammu's anger condensed into waves of malevolence, tearing at the void toward Gauli. He met them unflinching, his magic burning like a sun amid the dark dimension's gloom. A faint motion of his hand summoned a shield wall that took the first surge. Far below, amid the ruins of the Sanctum Sanctorum in Hong Kong, Wong, Mordo, and other mages crawled free of wreckage, bleeding and stunned. "Cough, are we alive?" one whispered. "Alive or dead doesn't matter. Dormammu has come," Mordo said, face ashen, pointing to the anomaly blotting the sky. Wong stared upward. The rift was vast, nearly the whole sky, but it had stopped expanding. That scale was no accident. Gauli had drawn a hole wide enough for all to stare into the dark dimension. He wanted witnesses. The mages, the people, the gods. He wanted the universe to see Dormammu's fate. Everyone leaned close. Mages cast long-range scrying spells and glimpsed the clash. It was enough. The sight overturned old certainties. Someone was fighting Dormammu. Someone who moved like a meteor and stood unbowed. Gauli accelerated his time flow. He swept the Huihuang sword axe through the air with blinding speed. Torrents of magic erupted from the weapon like a storm, fracturing into countless destructive beams that seared Dormammu's form. Blinding strokes left scorched marks across the Dark Lord's flesh. Dormammu bellowed, dark energy coiling his body as he pushed every advantage of his territory to speed his recovery. For a moment, his form warped as he wrenched open a devastating spell, an anchor of doom. A massive black anchor hurled to fix Gauli in the void and crush him with raw divine force. Colorful light surged again from Gauli's fingertips. The living radiance coiled around the energy anchor like a tight vine, binding it and neutralizing Dormammu's assault. From then on, Gauli took absolute control of the fight. No matter how Dormammu varied his attacks or amplified his strength with the advantage of his domain, Gauli seemed to anticipate every move, responding with boundless magic fused with the power of creation. Time and again, he guided his spells to bypass or confront Dormammu's strikes, always a step ahead, as if he had already prepared every counter before a flaw could even appear. Gradually, the dark energy that had once seemed inexhaustible began to fray under the intensity of the battle. Dormammu's expression shifted from fury to panic. He felt his confidence dissolving. How could he be contested like this inside the dark dimension, the realm he controlled? It was intolerable. The black mist surrounding him surged, congealing into hideous monsters that lunged at Gauli. "A dying struggle," Dormammu sneered through clenched teeth. "Your advantage only works when the gap between us isn't vast." Gauli casually swung the Huihuang sword axe. Stars in the sky converged into a brilliant magic blade, and he cut forward. Starlight ripped through the darkness, shredding the oncoming beasts. Each clash cracked the surrounding space, as if the void itself might split and swallow the light. Gauli grew brighter and stronger with every collision. He moved like lightning among the monsters, and each swing of the Huihuang sword axe dissolved another abomination into radiance. Dormammu, despite his might, was driven onto the defensive and steadily overwhelmed. Rage and desperation twisted his features. Avoiding Gauli's strikes, Dormammu roared in disbelief. He could not accept being humbled so completely within his own domain. Gauli's gaze, calm and piercing, seemed to see through the fury to the core of the Dark Lord's soul. He sighed softly, then traced a formation in the air with the Huihuang sword axe. A faintly glowing array coalesced, and Gauli's voice rang out, steady and resolute. "In the name of the Endless Lord, I declare, petty god who dares to invade Earth, I will end your tyranny." When the formation reached its peak, it burst into blinding light. Countless five-colored beams speared through the dark dimension. Dormammu howled, a sound full of despair. "No, you cannot defeat me." In one last desperate motion, the black mist condensed into a colossal battle axe. Dormammu swung it with all his might, pouring the full destructive force of his being into the strike. A cold smirk flickered in Gauli's eyes. He clasped hands threaded with many magician's rings and began to intone the incantation of night magic, while simultaneously drawing the power of creation to its fullest. He could have used his abilities without words at his level, but the chant amplified his power, proof of both discipline and artistry. As the incantation finished, the bell of creation chimed. The space before Dormammu collapsed into a vast black hole. The Dark Lord's axe cleaved into the void and vanished. With a casual motion of the Hui Huang sword axe, Gao Li intensified the gravity of the hole. Its suction roared and pulled Dormammu entirely inside. This gravity, it's a real black hole. Dormammu sputtered, struggling fruitlessly as he was drawn in. Bastard, you can't do this to me. I am Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. Gao Li watched coldly until Dormammu was swallowed by the singularity, then eased the formation and closed the black hole. I don't care who you are, he said quietly. This world does not need an existence like you. The jet of light from the vanishing black hole faded. The battle was over. Dormammu's voice was gone from the dark dimension, his shadow no longer looming there. Gao Li breathed in, surveying the torn void. This outcome would serve as a warning to the other dimension gods, unless any of them were confident they could surpass Dormammu inside his own realm. Word of the duel spread like a shockwave through the ranks of the dimension gods. In the cosmic void they murmured, exchanged astonished, fearful speculations. Have you heard? The Endless Lord defeated Dormammu. Impossible, Murmu. And inside the dark dimension? It's true. Many watched from Earth. Who is this Endless Lord to overcome Dormammu in his own domain? A black-robed deity shook his head in disbelief. Dormammu actually lost to the Endless Lord. How is that possible? Another voice asked, puzzled. There's no way this is coincidence. The Endless Lord's power must be beyond our imagining. Others nodded. Dormammu is stronger than most of us. This is known. That the Endless Lord beat him inside the dark dimension says everything. They debated and reassessed. Some feared the Endless Lord might be a threat to their authority. Others saw Earth becoming a forbidden zone. As long as the Endless Lord stands guard, invading Earth equates to suicide, one observed. The battle had not only punished Dormammu, it had redefined the order among the dimension gods. Gao Li's victory made him a mystery and a measure of power they could no longer ignore. The fear he inspired among them eclipsed that brought by the Ancient One. Thoughts of encroaching on Earth faded. Gao Li himself conserved what power remained. Magic and creation energy do not vanish entirely with a single transformation. Only a portion is spent. With some reserves left, he declined to seize the dark dimension. Its nature would inevitably influence any who claimed it, and he would not let himself be dragged down. Turning himself into a streak of light, he vanished back toward Earth. Back on Earth, amidst the lingering aftereffects of the clash, Gao Li decided to try his luck at the SSS rank lottery that had been accumulated by his actions. He spun the golden machine and watched the light condense into a card. Another golden tier early experience card revealed itself. Kamen Rider X Aid, Muteki Gamer Form. Gao Li smiled. It was a powerful ability. Though he couldn't transform into his limitless golden Oryu style at the moment, this card would be a valuable trump. He still had some magic and creation energy left, enough for limited use, not for a full second transformation, so the card was welcome. Far away in space, a ship headed toward Earth. In the cockpit sat a flamboyant, slightly disheveled man who looked human, a furry rocket raccoon, a towering Groot, a green-skinned woman, and a muscular man marked by patterned skin. Quill, how does it feel to be heading home? Rocket asked. It's fine, Peter Quill shrugged. Aren't you heading to your home too? After all, you're a rocket raccoon. Only Earth seems to have those. Hey, show some respect to the captain. How many times do I have to tell you I'm not a raccoon? Rocket snapped, baring teeth. Quill cocked his head. Groot, you've been with Rocket longer than me. Has he always been this stubborn? He's been to Earth before. Has he really never noticed raccoons there? Groot, I am Groot. Quill drew back. Gamora walked over. I've checked the old records. Rocket always visited Earth to recruit people. He probably never paid attention to the local fauna. Quill's eyes widened. Gamora, are you siding with him over me? Rocket scoffed with a grin. Who made me captain, huh? You're just a nobody. I'm Star-Lord, not a nobody, Quill protested. Gamora shrugged. I'm only making a conjecture based on the records. I'm not taking sides. Drax leaned forward. You're going to Earth to find someone? I never heard you know anyone on Earth. Rocket's smile went softer. I'm going to Earth to find my best friend. Drax blinked. Are you looking for me? Rocket fell silent. Oh, wait, wasn't that my spot? Quill pointed at himself. I thought Drax was supposed to be second. Your only claim to first place is your talent for causing trouble, Rocket said flatly. If I hadn't spent my universe form energy cleaning up your mess, I would have just warped us straight here. No spaceship needed. They were still bickering when Earth came into view, but before they could descend, a swarm of TPC fighters surrounded them. A synthetic voice crackled over comms. Warning, you have entered Earth airspace. Rocket and Quill exchanged bewildered looks. How had Earth's defenses advanced so far? They'd been picked up almost instantly. They weren't here to fight, though, so Rocket replied casually, Relax, friends. We mean no harm. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm Captain Rocket. After a brief exchange, the fighters stood down, and they were cleared to land. Just as they were debating how defensive to be, the message from TPC shifted tone. Greetings, alien guests. A new directive has been issued. Gao Li requests your presence. Gao Li? Rocket froze. He'd searched for Gao Li for years whenever he'd been on Earth and never found him. Did Earth even have a TPC back then? The name eased the crew's guard despite the confusion. Rocket led the Guardians to make contact, and after a few formalities, they were escorted to TPC headquarters. Seeing Gao Li sitting behind the director's desk left Rocket speechless. Gao Li! It's really you. You barely changed. That's right, it's me, Gao Li chuckled. But you've grown, Rocket. As soon as my people reported the name Rocket, I knew it had to be you. You. After the long separation, Rocket was momentarily lost for words. Where have you been all this time? Why couldn't I find you on Earth before? Gao Li gave a wry smile. Long story. Think of it as me being stuck in another world where time didn't pass the same way. I only returned to Earth decades later. The universe is big. Anything can happen. Rocket wasn't entirely satisfied, but he could live with that. The reason didn't matter as much as the fact they'd found each other. Once everyone had sat, Rocket and Gao Li fell into easy reminiscence, making Quill, who'd been standing back, murmur in amazement. Rocket never said his friend was so high up. On the ride to headquarters, Quill had used an alien tech device to tap into Earth's networks and look up TPC. The results stunned him. TPC was a major organization, and the man in front of them, the director, was the absolute head. Quill's eyes nearly popped. Rocket nodded at Gao Li. Speaking of which, where are Regusila and his family? I didn't see them. They went back to their hometown, Gao Li replied. They only came with us because of Supreme Evolution. Once that was resolved, they returned home. Gao Li turned his attention to the rest of the team. Rocket, you didn't introduce your companions. Rocket puffed a little. It's not just you who's been progressing. I've done a few good things in the Milky Way since we last met, gathered like-minded partners. Guardians of the Galaxy, he announced. This is Peter Quill, who claims he's from Earth. Gamora, Groot, Drax. And me. I'm obviously the captain. Gao Li stood and shook each of their hands. I'm Gori Parker. Since you're Rocket's friends, you're my friends too. After the pleasantries, Gao Li asked, curious, Rocket, why are you on Earth this time? Rocket grinned. What else? I came to find you. We just wrapped our last big mission and we're going on vacation. I figured I'd try searching for you again. Gao Li's face warmed. Perfect. I'll show you around Earth. There's a lot to see. Rocket waved him off. No need. We actually booked services on the vacation planet Ramakan. We were just passing Earth to try and find you. Rocket hadn't expected to find Gao Li this trip. It was a hopeful, last-ditch search. Gao Li brightened. Now that I've found you, why don't you all take me to Ramakan? I don't think I've been there. Gao Li's appetite for the unknown outweighed any desire for the familiar. Do you have Ramakan's coordinates? We can warp there, or you could hop us with your universe form. Rocket hesitated. Wait, did you make a universe switch? No, I did it another way, Gao Li said, pulling a compact device from his pocket. It works, though. He showed them his zone memory. Rocket took it and examined it as best he could. As a tech genius, he couldn't quite get the inner workings, only that Gao Li's tech had evolved a lot. Too bad the universe switch still recharges itself slowly, Rocket said. This thing can work, but come on, what's the fun of universe travel if you don't take a ship and admire the stars along the way? Gowley's expression was purely efficient. We'll fly the ship for an hour to enjoy the view, then I'll teleport the ship and everyone aboard the rest of the way. Rocket blinked. That familiar, stubborn insistence. In the end, they agreed to Gowley's plan. Practically speaking, they couldn't rely only on conventional jump points. Reaching Ramakan would require passing 100+ jumps, and mammals start to suffer after 50. Both the universe switch and a zone memory were peak warp tech, single, unlimited jumps anywhere in space. When Rocket showed Gowley the Lila again, Gowley barely recognized it at first. Only a few details and its silhouette confirmed it. The Lila always needs upgrades, Rocket said with a pat. It's way better now. They boarded in turn. Gowley studied the control panel and smiled. It's been a while. Ready? We're taking off. Hey, I'm the pilot, best driver in the universe, Quill protested, all nostalgic bravado. I just felt sentimental. Gowley, do you have the same kind of attachment to the Lila as Rocket? Quill asked. Maybe, Gowley said. There are memories of Rocket and me in her. That's got to mean some wild secrets about Rocket's past, Groot said excitedly. No, Gowley shook his head and smiled. Just ordinary memories. The ship's atmosphere was light. As the Lila slipped into interstellar space, the crew gathered at the portholes. Gowley's eyes settled on the endless stars. Space travel wasn't new to him. He'd wandered the Marvel universe and even chased lantern beasts in the DC universe. But each sweep of the cosmos still took his breath away. Stars glimmered like diamonds on black velvet. The Milky Way stretched like a river of light, dotted with planets in bright and muted hues. Nebulae washed the void in watercolor swirls. Star clusters burned like beacons. Comets and meteors streaked past, leaving bright tails as if the universe itself performed a slow, eternal dance. The Lila felt like a small boat carrying a bold crew through that immensity. Something over there, Gamora warned. Everyone snapped to the window to see an oval-shaped ship easing toward them. Its smooth, streamlined hull gleamed white and gold, almost like a loaf of polished metal. And, impossibly, there seemed to be a tiny figure standing on its top. What is that? Drax asked. That's a universe-class ship, Gowley said, but look at that little bean-sized person on top. It looks smaller than a bean. No, it's getting bigger, Rocket muttered. That's perspective, idiot, Quill snapped. Of course I know, Rocket replied. I was joking. The ship closed in. Gamora frowned. Be careful. Rocket slipped on a force driver and moved to a ready position. A comm request chimed through, and a voice, gentle but carrying an unmistakable authority, came over. Test. Do you receive me? Gamora opened the channel. Yes, we read you. This is the Lila, Guardians on board. State your business. I apologize for the disturbance. I have urgent matters to discuss. Rocket shrugged. Urgent matter? Don't tell me it's a rescue. We're on vacation. It's complicated, hard to explain quickly, the voice said. You'd better come over and hear it in person. Quill shot Gamora a suspicious look. Sounds pretty convenient. What if it's a trick? A different tone entered the voice then. Familiar, almost intimate. Peter, is that you? Don't worry, we are not enemies. Rocket's jaw tightened. This guy doesn't sound trustworthy. Quill, however, looked stunned for a different reason. You know me? Why do you sound like we're close? Of course, Peter, the man on the other end said softly. I'm your father, Ego. I came to find you. I heard you joined the Guardians. There's a habitable planet nearby called Phrygia. Land there, and I'll tell you everything. Then the transmission cut. Quill stood frozen, his face a storm of emotion. Hey, Quill. As Drax opened his mouth, Quill cut him off with a raised hand. I'm not going to accept some so-called father who shows up out of nowhere. Gowley raised a hand and smiled. Isn't this interesting? Whether you forgive him or accept him, you should at least know the truth before deciding. That made sense. With the captain's decision, the Guardian's ship Lila landed on Ego's world. At last they met Ego in person. He looked like an old man with a shock of white hair, but he radiated vitality. Beside him was a woman who called herself Mantis, 2 antennae on her head and eyes so dark the whites were barely visible. Anyway, Ego said, once everyone had sat down, I entrusted Yondu to find you, but for reasons I never learned, Yondu hid you and I never heard from you again. Ego told the story in brief. Quill, still sulking, snapped back. Because I was little then. I could sneak into places they couldn't and I stole things. Ego shook his head. Yondu was a scoundrel, yes, but I've found you now. Come back with me to my world. Father and son should have a chance to be together. They all ended up cursing Yondu together. Quill was clearly torn, so Ego excused himself and walked away. Gamora pulled Quill aside for a private word. After she talked, Quill finally agreed to go see Ego's place. They went to find Rocket and asked whether the captain would allow it. "All right," Rocket said after a moment. "We were supposed to be on vacation, but this is important for Quill. I guess the vacation can wait. Is that okay, Gowly?" Gowly's curiosity about Ego's planet outweighed any desire for a holiday. He agreed without hesitation. They'd try to squeeze in the vacation afterward. Ego led them to a beautiful world, air like a balm, forests so dense they looked painted, lakes clear as glass. They all stepped out, stunned. Gowly closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, as if the air itself cleansed him. "This place is beautiful," Drax said, awed, "like paradise." "Someone should stay with Lila," Rocket said out of habit, ready for emergencies. "Who'll stay?" Groot raised a hand. As a tree being, he was least affected by the natural splendor. "I am Groot," he said. "All right, leave it to you," Rocket said. Ego guided them through the wonder of his world, his smile warm and mysterious. Above them, lights like rainbows intertwined. Strange plants swayed and exhaled a soft floral scent, like a fairy tale forest. "This isn't just a beautiful place," Ego said with a small smile. "I'm a celestial. This planet is part of my body." Gowly's eyes lit up. A celestial as a living planet, invaluable. Ego brought them to a luxurious palace and began to show holographic images of his past. He'd been born millions of years ago, lonely, made himself a humanoid body, gone out into the universe, and eventually fallen in love with Quill's mother. "Wait, you mean you designed a reproductive system on that body? There's no reproductive isolation with humans?" Gowly asked with scientific bluntness. Quill blanched. "I don't want to hear that." Gamora shot Gowly a look. "Why would you ask that?" Gowly shrugged apologetically. "A scientist's curiosity. Different species on Earth usually have reproductive barriers." Drax, bewildered, said, "What's inappropriate about it? My parents told me how I was born every winter solstice." Ego laughed. "I did create a reproductive system. Since I made the body, I could adjust it to local life forms. No reproductive isolation. I also gave myself a digestive system, pain, all sorts of things. I wanted to know what it felt like to be human." Quill wanted to ask why Ego hadn't come sooner to take him, why he'd sent Yondu. Now, with so many of his friends present, that would be hard. Ego seemed pleased when Quill suggested they talk alone. Father and son drifted off to reminisce, while Mantis led the others to their quarters. On the way, Mantis demonstrated her ability to sense emotions. She touched Drax first, her eyes filled with tears instantly. "Oh my God," she whispered. Drax shook his head, trying to keep his composure. "Seeing this place makes me remember picnics with my wife and children." Drax's wife and children had been killed by Ronan, the wound that drove him into the Guardians. Mantis was overwhelmed by the depth of his grief. "Drax, there's something I need to tell you," she choked. Gamora's frown deepened. The scenery, as picturesque as it was, gave her an odd chill the whole way. Gowly, surveying the world more clinically, asked, "May I interrupt? I'd intended to do some ecological work here. Since we landed, I've looked around, and other than plants, there are almost no animals. Where are they?" Mantis's antennae drooped. "Because this world is Ego's body, and Ego won't let fleas live on himself." "Are we fleas?" Rocket snorted. "That's a new one." Mantis answered seriously. "I'm a useful flea. Ego raised me because I help him sleep." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "He's already gotten what he wants. You must leave. You're in terrible danger." The warning snapped everyone alert. Rocket's usual flippancy vanished. "What do you mean? Why are we in danger?" Mantis looked down. "Ego has combined with countless species across countless worlds to find an offspring who could share in his power. Each attempt failed. Ego doesn't like useless fleas. He destroys them all. Peter Quill is the first descendant he's found who shows promise." Gamora put the pieces together fast. "So Yondu didn't hand Peter over because he knew what happened to the others?" Mantis nodded. "Yes, Ego would not let them survive. He needs a partner, two Celestials working together, to achieve his expansion." "Expansion?" Gao Li's voice had that undercurrent of hungry curiosity that always made him the calmest in crisis. Explain. Ego's goal, Mantis said, was to spread himself through the universe, leave parts of himself on civilized worlds, and grow. One ego alone wasn't enough, but with Quill as another celestial, he could reach far more planets. We're leaving now, Gamora said, turning toward where Quill and Ego had gone. Rocket grabbed her arm. Wait, do you have a plan? How do you fight a planet? Gamora's voice was fierce. No plan right now, but we're not staying to be killed. How will you convince Quill? Drax asked. Silence fell for a beat. Gao Li, sensing the awkwardness, rubbed his nose and said, Figure out how to get through to Peter. I'm confident I can take on a planet. Rocket blinked. Did he just say he can fight a planet? Drax laughed loud and long. You say you can fight a planet? That's a great joke. Gamora glared. He's family to Peter. We're family. Let's see which family Peter believes. Meanwhile, Quill and Ego had been speaking quietly. Quill asked again why Ego hadn't taken him sooner. Ego's voice tightened. I loved your mother. I couldn't leave a world without her. You wouldn't understand. Quill looked stunned. I watched her die. Ego's eyes glistened. I've found you now. Give me a chance. Let me be the father she spoke of. He began to teach Peter to harness celestial power. Quill managed only a small, flickering ball at first. Don't worry, Ego said, smiling. We have all the time in the world. With eternity, there's time to learn. You'll be far stronger. Doesn't eternity get boring? Quill asked awkwardly, trying to change the subject. Ego's answer was practical. If you have purpose, no, and perhaps you should change some habits. He looked at Quill. Your friends are mortal. They're temporary. If you spend your life with them, you'll always carry their mortality. Before Quill could respond, the others burst in. Gao Li and the Guardians rushed forward. Mantis hid nervously behind Drax. Peter, Gamora shouted. Peter, come with us, Rocket barked. Leave Ego now. Get back to Lila, Quill spun, bewildered. Why? What's wrong? Gao Li was calm. As soon as Lila takes off and Peter leaves, Ego will sense it and pursue. You have to go now. Ego's expression changed. He narrowed his eyes and glanced toward Mantis. Mantis, he said, voice low. He looked at her with sudden sharpness. Only Quill still didn't see the danger clearly. He tried awkwardly to ease the tension as the room bristled around him. Section 205. What exactly do you mean by this? I finally found my father, so why are you making me leave? Don't you want me to have my family? Peter's voice tightened, his fists clenching. Ego said he loves my mother, he loves me, or are you jealous that I'm becoming a demigod and want me to stay weak? Oh, hearing you like that, even I'm getting tired of you, Drax muttered. Rocket bared his teeth. You idiot, aren't we your family? But Quill was cut off by Gao Li. One sentence from him hit like a hammer and shut down Quill's excuses. If your father loved your mother so much, why did he never go back to see her? What? This is because... Quill opened his mouth to explain for Ego and found there was no answer. Gao Li continued, at TPC headquarters, Rocket said you were an Earthling, so I pulled your file. Your mother died of cancer. So another question follows. Ego has the biological ability to construct a body from nothing. Why didn't he try to cure her? He didn't even visit when she died. Quill's memory flicked back to his story of being taken off Earth after his mother died. He had never seen Ego then. That meant Ego hadn't been on Earth at the time. His voice trembled. Why? Who said I didn't go back? Ego snapped. I went back to see her 3 times. You went back and you... Quill stared, unable to finish. It's precisely because of that I knew if I went back a 4th time, I'd be so lost in that tender embrace I'd never pull away, and my expansion plan would be ruined. Ego's tone was almost casual. Quill's face crumpled. Just because of that? You said you loved her. Oh yes, of course I love her, Ego sighed theatrically. I called her my little Lily. I remembered every song she liked, and it was so heartbreakingly efficient to put the tumor in her brain. The words came with the cold indifference of a being beyond human morals. Quill felt something snap. You killed Mom, he screamed. I know how that sounds, Peter, but Ego began and never finished. A furious blast of energy cut through Ego's chest as Quill fired. Ego staggered, and for a moment the air crackled with the violence of Quill's sudden attack. I think we should go now, right? Rocket said, trying to break the tension. No, Quill said through clenched teeth. He explained his plan to me. He's going to destroy the universe to expand himself. We have to stop him. Rocket waved a paw in defeat. All right, all right. After all, he's your father. You can do what you want. Who made us the damn Guardians of the Galaxy anyway? We didn't ask for this, but we'll save the universe. Rocket remembered Gao Li and added quickly, Sorry for getting you dragged into this. You go back to Lila first. Groot's staying there. Link up with him. Did you forget what I just said? Gao Li blinked. I said I can take on a planet. I'll stay. Rocket's mouth twitched. Hard to tell if that's confident or bragging. Either way, you'll get to see what we can do. He produced the cosmic switch, nearly at full charge. Transform. Cosmic on. Azure energy swirled around Rocket. The rest of the team drew their weapons. Who do you little bugs think you are? Ego's voice thundered up from the planet itself. Peter, I wanted to complete the expansion with you, but it seems you'd rather be my power source forever. Dark clouds swallowed the sky. Lightning braided across blackened clouds. The very ground quivered. As the planet's consciousness, Ego poured his will into the world, and it shuddered under him. Mountains rose and fell. The crust split with a thunderous groan. The planet's rage came from the core, and it was enormous. On the surface, trees bowed in gale-force winds, lakes roiled, mountains fractured, and waves pounded the coasts. Lightning arced like a furious dragon. Ego's presence felt like an apocalyptic storm. I want you all to die, his voice echoed through the valleys. The Guardians squared their shoulders. Drax tightened his grip on his weapon. Gamora's twin blades caught a cold gleam. Quill's face showed the strain of the revelation and the resolve beneath it. This planet is angry, Rocket said. We need to be careful. Thanks, Quill muttered. We can feel that. The world convulsed. Ego's form reconsolidated, then expanded, his will sharpening until the sky seemed small by comparison. Now I slightly regret it. Can we talk? Rocket shouted nonsense at the colossal being, but Ego only roared and raised his arms. In an instant, Ego towered into a titanic humanoid some 10,000 meters tall. His body was a moving mountain. No comparison could make him ordinary. Fingers the size of mountains crashed the earth, every step a tectonic event. He inhaled and the wind became a hurricane. He roared and the world trembled. Mountains collapsed, oceans roiled, storms screamed. Everything about him suggested annihilation. This isn't a dream, is it? Quill whispered. Is this how Celestials get mad? Peter, it's too late to regret now. Ego's voice rolled from horizon to horizon. You cannot understand my ambition. Obey. Be my power source. Damn it, Rocket muttered, rubbing his visor. This guy gets huge, and I'm out of ideas. Under Ego's gargantuan shadow, the land was almost lost. His fury swept like a prairie fire. Mantis, Gamora shouted, remembering. You said you could help make him sleep. Put him to sleep now. Mantis shook herself free of terror and pressed her hands to the ground. Sleep. Her antennae glowed. For a moment, the convulsions lessened. The giant's head dipped and he stilled. Mantis was straining visibly, pale and sweating. Hurry, he's too strong. I don't know how long I can hold him. Attack! Quill barked. There was no time to wait. They struck in unison. Quill darted between his father's colossal feet, firing with the practiced grace of a dancer fighting death. Gamora sliced and vanished around him, her blades flashing but barely scratching the colossal form. Rocket circled, his eyes hunting for weaknesses as the switch spat precise, violent energy that cut shallow scars into Ego's flesh. Drax bellowed and charged, battering at the giant and trying to climb to his chest. They worked together. Each blow made Ego's body shudder but never fall. The giant's mass made their strikes feel like pebbles against a mountain. Rocket's fire did more than the others. His gadgets left the most visible damage, but each wound only stoked Ego's anger. Mantis's hold began to falter. I can't suppress him anymore, she cried, blood flecking her lips. Guys, did we make a mistake? Rocket asked. Is attacking the giant doing anything? Isn't Ego's real form the planet itself? Quill's face went pale. Even if we could fell the giant, we can't beat an entire planet. Ego's eyes blazed open. How dare you? He bellowed, and his fury became a storm that blew the team backward. His counterattack was instantaneous and brutal, fists like meteors, wind like a cyclone. The battlefield dissolved into chaos. Quill barely dodged the first strike and was pounded by falling debris. Rocket was flung like a rag doll and hit the ground hard. Drax's swings carved grooves into Ego's skin, but the force of the blows slammed him backward again and again. Gamora was slammed into a mountain, dust and stone exploding around her. Every impact sent them tumbling, bruised and bleeding, sometimes without a direct hit. The shockwaves alone were enough. "Let you see the wrath of a god," Ego roared, each syllable shaking the air. Quill struggled to his feet, face bloodied but eyes burning with stubbornness. "I'm sorry, everyone. I brought you to an unbeatable enemy. I'll find a way to stop him. You get out of here." "No," Gamora spat, gritting her teeth. "We don't leave anyone behind." Rocket wiped the blood from his mouth. "He's too strong. We have to do something else." But the options were failing to form under the pressure. Ego's size and power rendered their efforts almost laughable. Each heavy blow tossed them through the air like weeds on a wind. Gamora coughed, fighting to stand. Despair edged their determination. "Hyperclock up," Rocket shouted suddenly, slamming a command on a console built into the cosmic switch. A white-hot flash flashed at the edge of their vision. Time and space compressed, their feet lifted from the ground as if the whole world had stuttered. When the light faded and their senses reassembled, they found themselves somewhere safe, somewhere unknown, pulled out of the battlefield by a fraction of an instant in time. They were alive, scattered, but alive. Section 206, "What's going on? Is that Gao Li?" Rocket stared, stunned. He couldn't help but think of Gao Li's accelerate mode. But when Rocket looked back at the battlefield, it wasn't the familiar accelerate armor standing at the center. This was a new suit, wings of light unfurling from its back. "Come here, 100 insect sword." Gao Li reached out, and a great sword appeared in his hand, as if from nowhere. "Kamen Rider Kabuto power, the Bee power, Drake power, Sassword power, all Zector combine, maximum hypercyclone." Gao Li pressed the 4 colored buttons in sequence. Particles converged into countless beams, which he channeled through the perfect Zector. With a thunderous blast, a towering column of light wrapped Ego's giant form. As Gao Li swept the beam across, the mountain-tall construct was cleaved into pieces. The sky thundered with falling chunks of a collapsing world. All the Guardians watched, dumbfounded. Holy cow! What kind of power was that? It was more devastating than the main cannons of many interstellar battleships. Quill, still linked to Ego's consciousness, recovered first. "It's not over," he shouted. "That giant wasn't Ego's true body. I can sense his power hasn't weakened. Killing that thing didn't hurt him." Hearing that, everyone felt their hopes sink. Gao Li rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "So we'll still have to fight Ego's true form. The maximum hypercyclone has an effective range of 100 kilometers and could easily take care of a 10,000-meter giant, but a planet—" He let the sentence hang. Ego's furious roar answered them. "You little bug, I'll admit you surprised me, but that's it. Prepare to meet death." More landmasses gathered in the distance, assembling into new giants. This time, there were five of those 10,000-meter constructs. The Guardians stood with mouths open, panic settling in. Even one of those colossi had been nearly impossible. 5 meant they were outmatched. "Don't call me despicable for fighting 5-1, Ego mocked. "After all, strictly speaking, you have one more ally on your side. Besides, with your power, you're a top-tier fighter in the universe, so it's only fair." Gao Li's mouth twitched. Where did that ridiculous boasting come from? "It's a bit difficult to handle you like this," Gao Li said softly, "though I can't transform into limitless golden Oryu style right now. Still, I'm not without a way to deal with a planet. In fact, it's kind of my specialty." With a flip of his hand, a card materialized in his palm, glowing bright. "Ego, you can only blame your luck now. Zoffy, let's go." A flash of starlight announced Gao Li activating the Zoffy trial card. A giant, promising and imposing, appeared on the field. Rocket gaped. What is that?" Even Quill, Drax, and Mantis looked shocked. Only Gamora still wore worry. The giant Gao Li summoned was massive, but beside Ego's 10,000-meter constructs, it barely looked like a toy. Gao Li's voice boomed, solemn and dignified. "Why?" Rocket gritted his teeth. "I'm not leaving you behind again." "Because this planet is going to explode," Gao Li said calmly. "I'm going to blow it up." Rocket blinked. Gao Li smiled a little. "Didn't I tell you? I have a way to deal with a planet. Don't worry, I won't stay behind. I'll fly out into space before it detonates." Rocket nodded and decisively shoved the cosmic switch into the holy sword. A space warp channel opened. He began evacuating everybody. No! Ego roared, bending the environment to slow and attack them, but Rocket's warp was nearly instantaneous. He didn't even need to take the Lila into orbit. He could teleport the ship into space with the cosmic switch. The Guardians couldn't defeat Ego, but they could buy the second they needed to flee. Fine, I'm coming too. Gowli leaped upward. Ego launched dozens of attacks to stop him. Ego might control everything on his planet, but whatever he controlled still obeyed physics. His anti-air capability wasn't especially strong. Zoffy, called into being by Gowli, was no joke. He smashed through obstacles with punches, beams, and kicks. Ego's attempts to stop him failed. You little bugs, I'll hunt you to the ends of the universe. Ego raged, but it was impotent bluster. Ego didn't believe Gowli when he said he'd blow up the planet. Then he saw Gowli in the upper atmosphere, striking a pose. Ego didn't know what it was, the signature of Zoffy's strongest attack, the M87 beam. Cha! A blue-white ray poured out. Gowli had deliberately unleashed it at full power. In usual fights, Zoffy held back the M87 beam because it was so destructive that it could ruin the planet he fought on. This time, Gowli went all the way. The M87 beam, like the light of a god of death, cut through the void with irresistible force, aimed straight at Ego's world. It was powerful enough to destroy a planet. The surface of Ego's world was incinerated by intense heat. Ego screamed as violent energy waves ravaged the land. The ground fractured, mountains collapsed, oceans boiled, rock, soil, and water were reduced to nothing under the beam's onslaught. Ego's consciousness felt an existential threat it could not escape. Terror and disbelief twisted together. No, how is this possible? Ego watched, horrified. The little bug he'd mocked had the nuclear launch button. Peter, come save me. If I die, you'll become immortal. Ah, Peter. His frantic cries echoed through space, but they could not change the outcome. Boom, an immense explosion rolled through the void. Ego's planet tore itself apart, collapsing into stardust with a final roar. On the Lila, the Guardians' pupils shrank with shock. They had watched a celestial fall before their eyes. Quill's expression was complicated. Through his connection, he had heard Ego's last, pleading words. Being mortal wasn't all bad, Ego had said as he begged his son. Quill felt a conflicted, heavy knot in his chest. Chapter 224, Gowli, the Great Emperor of Earth. After that, none of them were in the mood to continue their shore leave on Rama Khan. When Gowli returned to his human form and came back aboard the Lila, he sensed a strange atmosphere among the crew. Still thinking about Ego? You all need a proper vacation to get your minds off this, Gowli said. Except for Rocket, the Guardians regarded Gowli with a mixture of respect and awe. His suggestion carried weight. You're right, we shouldn't let one jerk ruin our break, Quill said. Exactly. Let's get hyped. I've been looking forward to this. Rocket and Quill rallied the team and the mood recovered. Gowli smiled faintly. The Guardians were always like that, comedic and resilient, no need to worry over them. A month later, Gowli happily returned to Earth. He hadn't been entirely idle. As director of the TPC, he kept in daily contact with Earth to monitor situations. How did he maintain zero-latency real-time communication while light years away? He'd solved it with quantum communication tech derived from the Kamen Rider O2 system. The O2 system's core was quantum leap technology, a pinnacle achievement in the quantum field. Once that system was near complete, Gowli adapted its tech into instantaneous quantum comms. Earth wasn't perfectly calm during his absence. There were minor crises and low-level villains, but the Victory team and TPC personnel handled them quickly. TPC didn't rely solely on the Victory team for frontline operations. It had the planet's most advanced military assets. Officially, it operated with the World Security Council. Unofficially, Shocker kept order from the shadows, covering black and white and providing formidable deterrence. Today, Gowli was back at his beloved TPC. After a short while in his director's office, boredom got the better of him and he headed for the lab. Director Gowli, actually, you have an invitation to Stark's party, Iz reminded him. Gowli waved it off. I've had enough entertainment on Ramakan. Besides, is any party as fun as doing research? I'd rather progress my experiments. I'll reply to Stark now, Iz said. At Stark Tower, Tony glanced at the message Jarvis had popped up and clicked his tongue. Life needs balance between work and play. That's why Gao is so boring, right, Banner? Bruce sipped a drink, awkwardly surrounded by several bikini-clad beauties. I actually get Gao. I'd rather be in the lab than here. Tony sighed. Why did the geniuses who could keep up with him intellectually all seem so dull socially? Despite Gowley's plans for lab time, a major incident interrupted him. Thor, the thunder god and a high-priority contact, had arrived and urgently requested to see Gowley in person. Curious about Thor's urgency, Gowley had his aides bring him to the office. After his men left, Thor leaned in anxiously. Gowley, I need your help with something. Only you, the Emperor of Midgard, can do it. Emperor? Gowley glanced around, amused. Who crowned me? Who put an imperial robe on me? Are you trying to trick me? Standing to the side, began to explain, but Thor cut him off. Don't explain the joke, you'll ruin it. Never mind that, Thor said quickly. I know Midgard doesn't have an emperor in any literal sense, but what I mean is you're the most powerful person here. I need your help. Gowley shrugged. Barely. So what do you need? Thor's voice grew tight. Last week my father's time came. Not only was his life ending, his power is weakening. We Asgardians normally grow stronger with age and only weaken when we're at death's door. I don't know what he was thinking, but he disappeared. Heimdall saw him go to Midgard last, and then he lost sight of him. Though Father's power is diminished, he's still the Allfather. If he wanted to hide, Heimdall wouldn't find him. So you want me to use my connections on Midgard to find Odin, Gowley said, a shadow of feeling crossing his face. It would be good to see the old man one last time. Thor softened. Don't say it like that. Time is up in Asgardian terms sounds short, but in Midgardian terms he might still have years left. Given Thor's plea and the situation with Loki still raw in his mind, Gowley didn't argue. He stood. All right, out of decency, I'll help you find Odin. Alert every TPC unit. Search globally for Odin's image. I've already uploaded his portrait to the database. Link Zia and Arc and local cameras for an AI comparison. Thor watched, still unsure of Gowley's method, but grateful he agreed. With TPC, a global organization, and the super satellites Zia and Arc able to monitor Earth from orbit, it didn't take long. As a god king, Odin likely had wards against magical detection, but technology is different. Found him, said within minutes. He's in Norway. Let's go. Thor was stunned at the speed. He'd already spent time searching on Earth before asking Gowley. Gowley had finished in minutes. The contrast between Asgard's limitations and Midgard's reach frustrated him, but there was no time for resentment. They stepped into a wormhole created by the zone memory and emerged onto a green coastal expanse by the sea, an uninhabited stretch with a wide view of the horizon. Odin stood with his back to them, gazing at the water. Gowley gestured for Thor to approach and stayed back out of respect. As director of TPC, he wanted to verify the Allfather's condition personally, but he wasn't there to intrude on a father and son. Thor called hesitantly, Father. Odin beckoned him closer without turning. Thor sat beside him, heart heavy. Odin did not look at him. Look at this place, he said softly. How beautiful it is. Father? Thor swallowed. It's me, Odin nodded. I know, son. I've been waiting. Thor tried to be resolute. I came to bring you home. Odin's voice was distant. Home? Yes, I don't have much time left. That's meaningless. Thor's impatience surfaced. Don't say that. I know I may have disappointed you, but I'll make it right. Odin shook his head. No, I failed you. I failed to protect Loki. I failed to preserve Asgard's knowledge. I failed to protect the ether particle. Worst of all, I left you a mess. Ragnarok has come. Ragnarok, Thor protested. No, I dealt with Surtur. He won't trigger Ragnarok anymore. Odin's tone grew heavier. It's not Surtur. Though the prophecy names him, he is not the key. Do you think any being capable of bringing about Ragnarok could be stopped easily? Most of Surtur's power was sealed in the helm in the vault. That's how you beat him. But she is coming. She is the fulcrum. Thor's mouth went dry. Who? What do you mean? Who is she? Odin closed his eyes. Do you remember when I mentioned the death goddess? That was my firstborn, your sister, Hela. Thor staggered inwardly. Odin continued. Her appetite for violence grew beyond any control. After the 9 realms were unified, Hela tried to stretch her reach across the cosmos. I couldn't stop her, so I had to imprison her. She draws power from Asgard. As long as Asgard stands, her power will be unbounded. she would be immortal and invincible. You would not be able to defeat her. Thor fought back the thought. I am your child. Surely we can stand together? Odin's answer was grim. Have you never wondered why the Valkyries are only legends in our halls and rarely seen? Because Hela annihilated them when they tried to capture her. The Valkyries were our elite, formidable, swift, deadly. She destroyed them. I have chosen a different path, and now you must face this alone. Thor opened his mouth and could find no words. Odin sighed, then spoke with a tenderness that cut through the dread. I love you, son. Remember what I told you. Remember why I refused to make you enemies with Gao Li. He lifted a hand and pointed across the water. Look there. Asgard has never been a place. It is home. With those final words, Odin's body dissolved into particles of golden light that drifted off and scattered into the air. Gao Li felt, in his gut, the end of a legend, the Allfather's curtain call, unfolding before him. Thor's composure broke. Father, he cried, nearly sobbing, but restraining himself because he knew what Odin had warned. The greatest enemy they might ever face was rising. Before Gao Li could step forward, a dark green light flared out over the sea. Both men stiffened. They walked together toward it. Thor stamped, and storm blue lightning wrapped his form, arming him and summoning his hammer. Gao Li reached for his side. The Beyond Zector flew into his hand. The Kabuto Zector snapped to his waist. He called the words instinctively. Transform, cast off, change beetle. The air chilled, and the wind died as something stepped through the green portal. A figure descended onto the lawn with the poise of a goddess, and in truth she was a god among gods. Hela, the death goddess, had come. She wore a black battle robe. Her hair fell like black feathers and billowed in the still air. Her face was beautiful and severe, her eyes cold and probing, and an aura of menace radiated from her. Hela walked to the lawn's center, and the very atmosphere seemed to harden. Even the sea's breeze stopped. So Odin is dead? She murmured, looking up at the sky with a smile that was almost mockery. What a shame. I wished to see him fall with my own eyes. Thor didn't wait. You must be Hela. I am Thor, son of Odin. Hela cocked her head, amused. Is that so? You don't resemble him much. She turned her gaze to Gao Li, now in Kamen Rider Kabuto form, and raised an eyebrow. And you? Gao Li put on a show. Me, before you stands Gori Parker, genius scientist, billionaire philanthropist, major shareholder of the Yggdrasil Foundation, director of TPC, passing Kamen Rider, human host of Ultraman, guardian of Earth, the endless lord. Hela blinked, utterly unmoved. Who? Undeterred, Gowli went on in a chant-like cadence. The man burning with a heart of vengeance, the man who keeps his promises with his life, the cold-blooded monster slayer, the defender of parent-child bonds, the retired monster specialist, the man who bleeds for love. Gori Parker. He even punctuated it with beatbox sounds, as if summoning an entrance theme. Thor, face heating, hurried in to tame the farce. Just think of him as the Emperor of Midgard. Gowli looked around for a throne. Who brought the dragon throne? Not fair. Hela's patience ran thin. She sneered. Such trifling Midgardians. Kneel. What did you say? Thor growled. She extended a hand, and a long black sword materialized in her grasp. Kneel before your new queen. Never, Thor roared, and hurled Mjolnir with all his strength. The hammer cleaved the air and struck Hela, hard enough to shatter mountains, yet Hela didn't dodge or block. She reached out, caught Mjolnir in her hand, and held it as if it were a twig. Thor's jaw dropped. He tried to call the hammer back, but Mjolnir trembled in her grip and would not move. Impossible. Hela looked down at him with contempt. You can't even fathom the things I can do. Then, with a squeeze of her fingers, Mjolnir cracked. With a roar of unleashed force, it shattered into fragments that scattered across the grass. Thor stared at the ruins of his hammer, helpless fury and dawning terror in his eyes. Gowli, who had briefly studied Mjolnir before, was stunned too. The weapon's legendary durability made its destruction impossible by ordinary means. No wonder Odin feared her, Gowli muttered. Her speed, her strength. He slammed his hand on his belt. Clock up! Gowli hit clock up. He hadn't yet switched into his Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto form, but even normal clock up made the world almost stop. Hela moved like a machine. Let's go big right away, he muttered. He slammed the Kabuto Zector and charged. 1, 2, 3, Rider kick! He connected with a spinning kick that sent Hela skidding across the ground. She spat blood. A deep gouge marked the earth where she'd landed. Gowli moved to follow up with another rider kick, but Hela's sluggish motion suddenly sharpened, enough that she slung a long sword toward him. He blinked. She can even barely keep up with me and clock up? Only for a moment was he surprised. He easily dodged the thrown blade. Barely, he said to himself. There's nothing you can't break if you're fast enough. He counted again. 1, 2, 3, rider kick. He smashed Hela's face with another blow. Her head snapped back and she flew slowly, but she adjusted her posture in midair, landing and immediately spitting several more long swords at him. Gowli twisted and weaved to avoid them, and by the time he'd cleared them, the clock-up window had ended, and he returned to normal speed with 2 resounding thuds. Hela stood perfectly composed, wiping blood from her mouth with a trace of surprise on her face. I didn't expect a Midgardian to have such speed, she said. I've changed my mind. Are you interested in a job, Gori Parker? Gowli frowned. Her voice had been confident, unshaken. The blood suggested he'd hurt her, but her composure said otherwise. He remembered Odin's words to Thor before his death. Hela draws power from Asgard. As long as Asgard stands, her power will be boundless, and she will be effectively immortal. Is your life tied to Asgard's? He guessed. Hela chuckled. You learn fast. You will never be able to defeat me. I don't think so. Gowli fitted the Beyond Zector into his side buckle and flipped the switch. Hyper cast off. Change. Hyper beetle. Hela cocked her head, curious. Gowli summoned the 100-insect sword with a thought. If her immortality is tied to Asgard, how will she respond to overwhelming destructive power? Hela sneered and unleashed a dense rain of slender, cold-glowing blades. Even to the Asgardian eye, they were fast. To Gowli and Hyperclock up, they crawled. He slapped the Beyond Zector. Hyperclock up! The world stopped. Hela froze like a statue. The sword rain hung in the air like ornaments. Calmly, Gowli tapped each button on the perfect Zector. Kabuto power, the Bee power, Drake power, Sassword power, all Zector combine. Maximum Hyper Typhoon. A tens of meters long blade of condensed light formed along the 100-insect sword. Gowli swept it through Hela without mercy. Her body split cleanly in 2, destructive force enough to cleave an Asgardian royal. But even in the frozen instant of Hyperclock up, he saw the impossible. After a blink, severed limbs knitted together, skin smoothed, and Hela stood intact as if nothing had happened. What kind of recovery is that? He breathed. It wasn't mere healing. It looked like a rule. Asgard's survival equaled Hela's survival. As long as Asgard endured, any injury reverted to a state consistent with Asgard's current condition. He tested it again. He flipped the perfect Zector to gun mode. Kabuto power, the Bee power, Drake power, Sassword power, all Zector combine, maximum hypercyclone. A thick beam of light loaded with tachyon energy fired, a column of annihilation that ripped the sea in half. Flesh and blood peeled from Hela, her skeleton and organs exposed, all stripped away by the onslaught. Gowli held the barrage until the perfect Zector began to overheat. Then, in the next instant, Hela was whole again. As expected, truly troublesome. He let out a long breath. Hyperclock up collapsed as his suit's heat dissipation hit its limit. To anyone watching at normal speed, Thor included, the scene was chaos. Gowli would vanish with a whoosh, flashes and afterimages. Hela hurled like a rag doll, huge explosions and blinding light, the ocean sliced in 2. From Thor's vantage point, it made no sense. Hela bled and then looked unhurt. Gowli changed armor mid-fight and vanished. Thor could only watch explosions and bursts of light and wonder what had happened. Gowli stepped back and Hela smiled slowly. Gori Parker, you've surprised me. Your speed, perhaps you are the fastest in all 9 realms. Then her tone cooled. It's a pity it's all pointless. No matter how fast you are, you're still immortal. Haven't these efforts shown you your insignificance? Thor snapped. I'm still here. Don't ignore me. He lunged forward to engage. Without Mjolnir, his fists and raw strength were all he had. His face was set in fierce determination. Hela's eyes were cold, brimmed with a still terrible power. She waved a hand. Countless thin, gleaming blades spun into being, swirling like a flock of black butterflies, cutting the air. Swords rained down. Thor moved with surprising speed and agility. He threaded through the sword shadows, ducked and countered, his fists cracking against blades and sending up sparks. But Hela's assault was relentless. Thor, she said with icy derision, your strength isn't enough. Even handling my casual attacks drains you." She condensed more blades in her hands. "Father said I had untapped potential. I will only grow stronger." Thor's jaw tightened. He leapt and smashed both fists into the center of the sword sea. Steel crashed and scattered, for a moment beaten back by the force of his blow. It was only a temporary victory. Hela showed no surprise and coalesced an even larger storm of swords. "Too weak," she scoffed. "Without Mjolnir, you flail like a headless fly." Thor felt the sting of truth, but he wouldn't yield. He kept fighting, every punch making his arms tremble, every block driving his breath ragged. It was like being trapped in a loop. No matter how he struck, the onslaught reformed. Leaves and bits of shattered blades sprayed outward with each collision. "Gowli, why are you just watching?" Thor barked through gritted teeth. Gowli, who had been observing coolly, replied without taking his eyes off Hela. "I tried everything moments ago. I killed her twice, but she always reverts because of Asgard. It's meaningless to keep trying to injure her permanently." He watched Thor trade blows. "So I'm studying her patterns while you engage. You're doing fine." Hela smiled smugly. "The Midgardian is practical. He accepts reality quickly." Gowli added, "I'm still in a high-speed combat mode. Your pace and hers aren't compatible with coordinated attacks. Don't worry. My heat dissipation is nearly exhausted, but if you're in mortal danger, I'll step in. Trust my speed." Thor felt a mix of confusion and uneasy reassurance. Something about Gowli's calm logic didn't sit right, but the promise of help was a small comfort as he squared off against Hela's implacable blades. 209. Section 209. The truth was undeniable. Did he really have to fight alone? But how could he? Hela was too strong. Just as despair threatened to swallow him, Thor noticed Hela's eyes. They glittered with triumph, mocking his helplessness. The look only kindled the anger inside him. Humph! He closed his eyes, drew a deep breath, and tried to steady himself. Only by thinking clearly could he find a way to beat her. He ran through past battles in his head. How had he bested enemies who had once overwhelmed him? The more he thought, the worse it felt. Hela was not like any of those foes. She was on another level. A cold certainty settled over him, the same sickening feeling he'd had the first time he'd met Gao-Li, both reason and instinct telling him he couldn't possibly win. "Humph, you lasted long enough, worthy of being Odin's son, but it ends now." Hela's gaze was ice. With a casual motion, countless blades condensed in the air and became a black, writhing sea of swords. Cold light flashed in her pupils as she sent the torrent sweeping toward Thor. Thor surged forward, swinging his massive fist to break the oncoming storm, but the blades were merciless, whistling through the air and cutting into him. "Ah!" He screamed as blades splintered his defenses. 2 fists and 2 feet were no match for 10,000 swords. He was pierced and slashed in several places and crashed to the ground. "Gao-Li, didn't you say you'd save me at the critical moment?" "That wasn't the critical moment," Gao-Li said, spreading his hands. "I saw that when the sword rain was about to hit. You protected your vital points. Only non-vital spots were struck." Thor stared. "What, this is my fault now?" "Humph. Gori Parker, surrender to me. I will lead you to conquer the universe," Hela sneered, ignoring Thor and addressing Gao-Li instead. Her contempt stung Thor, and guilt and sorrow surged through him. He'd been judged weak. "Father, I'm sorry. Without Mjolnir, I'm no match for Hela. Maybe you were wrong about me." Odin's voice echoed in Thor's ears, calm and steady. "No, I did not misjudge you. Have you forgotten? I told you that you couldn't defeat Hela alone, which is why you should have sought Gowli's help." "Father?" Thor's eyes widened. Was it an auditory hallucination? Yet a shimmering image of Odin seemed to appear, as fleeting as a mirage. "Still, the gap between you and Hela is not as great as you think. It's not because of your hammer. Tell me, Thor, are you the god of hammers, or are you simply Thor?" His heart pounded. That was it. He was Thor, not just the wielder of a hammer. A surge of resolve replaced despair. "I said, don't ignore me." Odin's phantom smiled and vanished. Thor forced himself up, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. This battle was far from over. Though Mjolnir was gone, the power of the thunder ran in his veins. "I will not be defeated, not by you, Hela." He rose and charged the sea of swords again. A flicker of surprise crossed Hela's features, but she didn't lower her guard. The blades coalesced into a tornado and swallowed the sky. Thor tore through it like a bolt of lightning. His fists sparked with electricity as he smashed into the blades. Thunder erupted among the swords, chaos roiling the heavens above the shoreline. Thor glowed, eyes burning with stubborn will. Thunder god power, never extinguished, he pounded the black expanse time and again, breaking swathes of blades like the hammer of destruction itself. Hela's expression shifted. She felt the divine power welling up in him. But her surprise lasted only a moment. She had seen awakenings before and still stood above Thor. Not bad, but far from enough. She sneered and intensified the sword rain. Blades surged like a horde of devils, aiming to shred every inch of Thor, leaving no safe place. Hyperclock up! Buzz! Thousands of swords froze a hair's breadth from Thor's body. Gowli strolled forward, grabbed Thor by the collar and yanked him clear, hauling him to safety. Hyperclock over. All around, black long swords tore into the earth with a hiss, upturning the ground like a forest of obsidian spears. In a blink, Thor found himself standing beside Gao Li, the battlefield a jagged forest where he had just been. He swallowed hard. Gao Li had been right about the timing. If not for him, Thor would have been killed. A fine dodge, but how many more times can you dodge? Hela's smile was chill. She conjured another massive blade in her hand, ready to renew the assault. Gao Li didn't look at Hela. He faced Thor. I'll hold her here. You know what you need to do. What do you mean? Thor blinked, confused. Then Gao Li sighed and shook his head. No, you know. Think about what your father said. Your heart is resisting, unwilling to accept it. Thor fell silent. Calm finally let sense return to him. He remembered Odin's words. Hela's power was tied to Asgard. As long as Asgard existed, her power would be limitless, immortal and indestructible. She could not be beaten while Asgard stood. Asgard is not a place, Thor breathed. Wherever the Asgardians are, that is Asgard. He clenched his fists, sorrow and resolve warring in him. If Hela drew strength from Asgard, then Asgard itself had to be destroyed to stop her. He recalled Odin's hints. Surtur, the fire giant, was the one tied to Ragnarok, and his power had once been sealed in a crown. Surtur could destroy Asgard, he muttered, but he was weakened by the vault and helmet. Odin's words were a guide. I understand, Thor said, meeting Gao Li's eyes. First, I'll evacuate everyone, send them away on Asgardian ships. Then I'll have a sorcerer summon Surtur with the helmet. Let him bring about the end of Asgard. Sorcery belonged not only to Loki. Asgard had many sorcerers. The most capable was Frigga, Thor and Loki's mother, and the queen of Asgard. Because the Dark Elves had been drawn to Earth, Asgard had avoided the worst of their assault. Frigga lived. She was more than capable of casting the summoning spell. A bitter smile touched Thor's face. It's cruel that Mother must be the one to destroy the Asgard she loves. Maturity settled over him. He bowed to Gao Li. I know how dangerous this is. I can only rely on you. Only you, who once defeated my father, have the strength to hold her. Please, hold Hela long enough for me to evacuate everyone. I beg you. Maximum hypercyclone. Gao Li unleashed the attack, sweeping away Hela's sword rain and battering Hela herself. He nodded at Thor. Go, I'll handle things here. Thor seized the opening. He looked skyward and shouted, Bring me back, Heimdall! Boom, the Bifrost's beam descended like a pillar of light and took Thor away. Hela watched coldly as he vanished. Gao Li stiffened. Royalty could sometimes use the Bifrost themselves, and as guardians of sufficient power could cross space with it. Gao Li himself could cast a Bifrost, so he knew how dangerous it would be if Hela could do the same. The green tint to Hela's teleportation hinted at something unfamiliar. He trusts you a lot, doesn't he? Hela snorted. He thinks you can hold me. Your strength is something, I'll admit, but it must have limits. Hela was right. Gao Li's Kamen Rider system had a flaw. The higher the output, the more intense the cooldown. Excessive power required dissipation. Gao Li smiled and sheathed the 100-insect sword. You're right. Kamen Rider Kabuto is incredibly fast, but that speed brings a downside. It's the least suitable rider system for stalling. Hela's triumphant smile widened. Good that you understand, mortal. However, Gao Li turned the words on her. I also have a rider power that's perfect for stalling. You have immortality. I have supreme invincibility. Maximum hypercyclone. 227. Chapter 25, Supreme Invincible Player. 210. Section 210. No matter how many times Hela, facing Gao Li, struck him with the transcendent speed of Kamen Rider Kabuto, wounding and killing him in simulation, It was useless. Each blow only forced Kabuto into a rapid cooldown. So Gao Li changed tactics. No more chasing speed and lethality, focus on defense. I hear you're immortal, he called, but what happens when you face my invincibility? What do you mean? Hela asked, frowning. To be honest, Kamen Rider Kabuto's speed had already astonished her. Nothing else she'd seen in her long life compared. Even in Asgard, it would be a top-tier marvel. So she found it hard to believe a Midgardian could match or surpass it. Then Gao Li flicked his wrist and produced a golden card from nowhere. Activate, he said. He drew the Kabuto Zector and the belt. The golden card melded into light particles and formed a gamer driver at his waist. At the same time, two enormous gashots appeared in his hands, one pink, one gold. Maximum Mighty X. A gigantic electronic screen condensed behind him, a vast game domain rippling outward. With a backhand motion, he slotted the huge pink gashot into the driver. Maximum Gashot! Gao Li didn't fear an ambush. He was an augmented human. While he couldn't match Hela's raw strength, he could bat aside the flying swords and resist sneak attacks. Hela, however, stood frozen, genuinely puzzling over the spectacle. What is that? It looks like a child's game. I suppose it does, Gao Li laughed and slammed the golden gashot next to the maximum one. Hyper Muteki. A new illusory screen bloomed behind him. Stirring music rose as he explained, This game, Hyper Muteki, lets you play as an absolutely invincible protagonist. It's a full-on hack-and-slash Musu experience. Docking, he announced, tapping the gashot. Bakken, Mu, Ki. Invincible? Ridiculous. Hela snorted and sent several flying longswords streaking toward him, but they were intercepted by a swarm of golden meteor-like projectiles that circled Gao Li. The virtual screen became a golden cube that descended and enveloped him. Gao Li raised his hand like a victor. Glitter, like meteors, the golden strongest gamer, Hyper Muteki X Aid. The circling meteors formed an undersuit on his body. The cube sealed him in glorious golden armor. Kamen Rider X Aid, Muteki Gamer form. Muteki Gamer was X Aid's final form, unlimited invincibility, even able to ignore Kamen Rider Kronos' time stop. It was a health lock, immune to true damage, able to nullify special abilities, teleport, and alter attack judgments inside the game domain. Essentially cheats turned into reality. What a joke, Hela spat. You think dressing up changes anything? She dared not act rashly. Kabuto had already given her trouble. This new hyper armor might be even stranger. From Hela's perspective, Gao Li was the most outrageous Midgardian she'd ever encountered. Golden sunlight spilled across the sea like a prelude to battle. The air tightened. What's the matter? Not attacking? Gao Li chuckled. If you want to drag it out, that suits me fine. My invincible time is unlimited. Hela rubbed her fingertips, watching. Swords, graceful and lethal, coalesced continuously at her command. Whooshes filled the air as tens of millions of longswords, sometimes like a storm, sometimes like coiling serpents, rushed at him. They didn't disappear like before. That terrifying speed is gone. Since they won't miss, then increase the attack, she muttered, secretly delighted that Gao Li wasn't using extreme speed. She hated being able only to take hits without answering. It was unbearable. Ha 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 ha! I will make you pay 100-fold for the blood you spilled. She clenched the air and unleashed a horde of sword shadows, a lethal dance called death. The battlefield filled with darkness and slaughter. Gao Li didn't dodge. He moved through the sword rain like a ghost and emerged unharmed. So tough? Hela's brows tightened. She could shrug at many attacks. Who feared whom? You do have skill. No wonder you're so confident. Is defense what you've upgraded this time? Since your armor is impenetrable, Hela said, I will make your will submit. Her power swelled and twisted around her palm. Endless sword shadows were born again, more furious and chaotic, like a tidal barrage meant to crush everything. I don't believe defense is absolute. Even I can't be stopped. The long swords cut through the air like falling meteors. I already said, I am invincible now. Gao Li replied calmly. When the blades hit him, they struck an unbreakable shield that flashed with blinding light. Hela roared and condensed a gigantic longsword, an aircraft carrier-sized blade, and smashed it into him. The impact sent Gao Li flying. His back slammed into a distant boulder and reduced it to dust. Ha ha! You won't be unharmed this time, Hela declared, locking onto the fallen rider to finish him. But Gao Li had suffered no injury. Muteki Gamer didn't take true damage, Knockback could happen, but his health remained untouched. He brushed stone dust from his armor and rose, unblemished, eyes steady. "Do you see, Hela? Your attacks don't touch me." There was no anger or joy in his voice, only cold certainty. That calm was the ultimate insult. "What? What?" Astonishment flickered in Hela's eyes. In all the 9 realms, she'd seen countless foes, and to meet such a defense in this universe unsettled her. But as the death goddess who'd fought for Asgard, she would not yield. "Good. I'll make you regret this." Dozens of longswords hummed around her like guardian eagles. Their number had fallen, but each blade now brimmed with her concentrated divine power. Suddenly, she thrust both hands upward. The sword surged and then darted at Gao Li with blinding speed. Sword shadows filled sky and sea, faster than before, leaving no room to dodge. The sharp screams in the air told Gao Li each strike carried killing force. Gao Li held his ground. His steps were steady and deliberate, each one timed with his heartbeat. Surrounded by shimmering golden starlight and focused airflow, he parried each longsword. Every contact sent the blades flying, shattered by a burst of force the moment he touched them. That was the effect of his early access card. It put him at the peak of the power he was experiencing. For a brief period after transforming, Muteki Gamer could emit sparking glitter, glowing particles that reinforced the suit and temporarily doubled all combat stats: punch, kick, speed, strength. Thanks to the early access attribute, Gao Li extended that period and maintained the doubled stats for the entire fight. His physical abilities rose to no less than Thor's or Hela's. Hela's enhanced attacks felt manageable. The battle escalated. Hela's offenses grew more frenzied while Gao Li's defenses deepened. Sword rain and golden light braided into a ferocious symphony. 2 titanic forces pushed and parried, seeking one another's limits. Time seemed to thicken. Even the sea breeze fell silent, as if chanting the contest. Gao Li knew Hela's swords contained infinite destructive force when she truly unleashed them, but he trusted Muteki Gamer, even when it meant facing horrors beyond his understanding. "This is absurd," Hela hissed. "Why would Midgard contain such a troublesome existence?" Realization finally hit her. Brute force alone would not win this. Thor had trusted Gao Li to stop her, and she hadn't been wrong in assessing his capacity. "Even I get hurt and then rely on Asgard's instant recovery. He doesn't get hurt at all? How can there be such a cheap ability?" Frustration boiled in her. Muteki Gamer was maddening. Hela could not grasp the principle behind it. The only response she had left was to fight harder. "You've earned my respect, Gori Parker. To shock me in both speed and defense, no one in the 9 realms has done that." She paused and drew a long breath. "Perhaps when I fought Odin, I never truly gave my all. Today, you have forced me to." Hela poured everything into breaking through Muteki Gamer. All she managed was to knock Gao Li flying. He dusted himself off and rejoined the fray as if nothing had happened. It disgusted her. "I can do this all day," Gao Li said with a half-smile. "No. So long as the fight continues, I'd keep going for a year if I had to." "Is that so? Then let me end this battle, and your life." Hela snapped. She tapped a finger and all the longswords froze, then spun as if alive and wove a new attack pattern. Gao Li watched closely, reading the change, seeking openings, and adapting. He would not be careless just because he took no true damage. He never forgot Hela's goal wasn't to defeat him, but to break free and return to Asgard to stop Thor. Section 211, Gao Li could have used the zone memory to follow, but doing so would have ended his invincible player experience card. He would have had to use the Lost Driver to transform midway, and he couldn't assume the limitless Golden Oryu style at that moment. More importantly, he wasn't confident he could stop Hela from interfering with Thor if he did. At best, he might hold her to a standstill. In an evenly matched fight, Hela, convinced of her immortality and indestructibility, could ignore Gao Li's attacks and harass Thor or Frigga directly, ruining Thor's plan. So Gao Li had to make sure he could lock onto Hela and keep her from performing any spatial transfers. To keep her attention and stoke her hate, he spat out the occasional taunt. "Hungry? Not strong enough? That all you've got?" The tactic worked perfectly. Hela's eyes flared with fury. If glares could kill, mountains of corpses would have piled up long ago. But no matter how enraged she became, anger couldn't change reality. Hela couldn't kill Gao Li, and Gao Li couldn't truly eliminate Hela. The two were locked in a stalemate, pulling at each other for what felt like an eternity. Hela tried to escape the vortex and leave the battlefield, but Gao Li refused to let her. The invincible player could teleport freely within the game domain. No matter where she ran, he could teleport to intercept. Even if she knocked him away, he could reappear in front of her mid-air. After all, he wasn't actually injured and could rejoin the fight instantaneously. As the sun set, despair began to creep into Hela's expression. Just like Gori Parker said, his invincibility doesn't run out, she realized bitterly. Her immortality and indestructibility had limits, and that boundary would be reached once Thor finished evacuating the Asgardians and summoned Surtur to destroy Asgard. When the moon rose, Hela suddenly froze. "No!" she howled, shocked and furious. Her relentless assault weakened, her nearly infinite magic started to ebb. Fear crept into her eyes. Her connection to Asgard had vanished. Has Thor finished over there? Then it's time to end this. Gao Li's figure, resolute amid the rain of swords, shone like a rising sun. He tapped his invincible player Gashat twice. Finisher, hypercritical sparking. Golden energy concentrated in his right foot. Gao Li leapt, teleporting repeatedly around Hela as he unleashed a barrage of kicks. Hela, eyes bloodshot, blocked with her sword, and at first she believed she had parried them all. "Heh, so you've reached your limit too?" she sneered. Then a sharp pain exploded across her back, followed by every other place Gao Li had struck moments before. Head, face, shoulders, thighs, arms, chest, abdomen. Wah! Delayed damage! Blood spurted as Hela stared in disbelief. The delayed attacks bypassed her blocks. The accumulated damage from the finishing move detonated across her body. When the hypercritical sparking finished, Hela sank to her knees, bleeding. She bowed her head, touched the last floating longsword lingering in the air, and let it fade like the others. With a tone half resigned and half defiant, she said, "Gori Parker, not every life can stand before death as you do. You win this time. I admit you are stronger. The universe's survival of the fittest, Odin. My fate proved I was right." With that roar cast to the sky, Hela, like Odin before her, dissolved into specks of light and scattered. The battle between the two titans ended in a quiet no one would have predicted. With the fight over, Gao Li's experience card expired. He released his transformation and stood silently, staring out to sea. Two supreme beings had fallen here. Should he erect a monument and open it as a tourist attraction? The absurd thought flashed in his mind, and he quickly shook it away. "We should do the follow-up work first," he told himself. "Thor will look for me. Otherwise, there'll be nowhere to settle the Asgardian refugees." Half a day later, as Gao Li predicted, Thor came in person. Now the new king of Asgard, Thor thanked him profusely. "On behalf of Asgard and the Nine Realms, I thank you. Without you, Hela might have dragged Asgard, and even the Nine Realms, into a war of conquest. Who knows how many would have died, how many families torn apart. Thank you for preventing the worst." Gao Li waved it off. If it could have spread, Earth might have been involved. As TPC director, it's my duty. No need to overdo the thanks. Thor's smile turned embarrassed. "Where will you settle the Asgardians? Have you found somewhere?" "I came partly to thank you, but mostly because this is truly troubling me." Strictly speaking, the number of Asgardians wasn't enormous, far fewer than Earth's population and even smaller than many nations. But they were still a large group, and finding them a place to live pressed heavily on Thor. "How about this?" Gao Li suggested. "TPC is mainly responsible for Earth's security, not refugee resettlement. But I have influence. I'll build a platform so you can negotiate openly with various nations. No backroom schemes. Let them choose whether to accept your people." Thor agreed at once and thanked him again. He increasingly appreciated Odin's old warnings. You didn't want to be enemies with Gao Li. He could be an invaluable ally. After Thor left, Gao Li activated the office's defenses and opened the system panel. His actions, defeating Hela among them, had earned him an S-rank lottery draw, but he hadn't used it. Instead, he wanted to investigate the system itself. As a scientist, curiosity gnawed at him. The system clearly contained mysteries beyond any technology he'd seen, and a reckless approach might render it unusable, like a novice crashing a complex program. Gao Li was rational. He only took on things he judged within his capacity. But he'd grown stronger, learned new techniques, and expanded his scientific methods. He felt ready to probe the system's secrets, carefully. For me now, an S-rank draw is of little immediate use, he mused. Only SSS rank prizes can push me further, so I'll run an experiment instead. He'd been forming the idea since World War II. The clue had been the reward he'd drawn then, Fushi Yingshou's ID core. Later, in the DC universe, he'd drawn Blazar Ultraman and managed to communicate with it. Blazar wasn't a simple prize. It displayed self-awareness. When he'd drawn Kamen Rider Ryuki, he'd also got Muso Dragon. Were these beings created from nothing by the system? Possibly. But considering items like Fushi Yingshou's ID core, Gao Li suspected something else. The system didn't manufacture these things from nothing. It used lottery energy to retrieve them from other times or other universes. The system can absorb temporal energy, Gao Li thought. Its main upgraded ability is time travel. It's very possible my first crossing was caused by the system. Everything points to the system being a crystallization of space-time technology. Its core function is to connect and traverse time and space. He spread his hands. Infinite magic swirled in his left hand. Creation power flared in his right. These were the reserves left after his fight with Dormammu, and he deliberately saved them. When I channeled creation power before, even without the system, I briefly opened a passage to the Kamen Rider world, he recalled. So, can I replicate that process? Use the system's lottery energy as the core, creation power as the catalyst, build night magic from scratch as a bridge, and activate it with infinite magic. That was the experiment he envisioned. With the magic he'd borrowed across the DC universe and his own experience, he believed he could independently develop extremely complex night magic. Creation power originates from the Kamen Rider world and can act as a beacon to it. If this works, I'll be able to communicate with the Kamen Rider world. Pen racing, he filled page after page with formulas and diagrams. He closed his eyes and saw a vision. The endless cosmos, stars like notes in an unfinished symphony, time and space entwined. He felt that mysterious power, sometimes a trickle, sometimes a torrent, striking his mind. When he opened his eyes, the blueprint for an unprecedented ultimate magic was complete. He linked every element together, weaving a net that could pierce time and space. Faint runes appeared in the air as his fingers traced the pattern. Time seemed to stall. Gao Li's heartbeat synced with the rhythm of his hand, each motion infused with infinite magic. "Show me your true face, system," he murmured. He focused everything into the spell. A breeze stirred, the office filled with surging magic. A violent recoil hit him, like 10,000 horses charging through his body. "Connect, link," he breathed. He communed with creation power and used the system's reward as fuel to activate the new magic. The space in his office warped into something fantastical and unknown. Gao Li felt his consciousness penetrate a barrier. He linked to another world. Triumph flooded him. "I succeeded," he cried. "I sensed another world." It wasn't merely a parallel dimension. Like the Marvel and DC universes, it was a completely different world, a new reality waiting beyond the veil. 212, Section 212, Section 29, Chapter 227, The Black Order's All-Out Attack. Gao Li felt as if he had opened a door into a brand new world. Just as he was about to explore further, he noticed the S-rank lottery energy draining fast. As I thought, the lottery energy can be used as fuel for traversing time and space. The system only needed to make a single jump to retrieve a reward, so the total lottery energy corresponded to a one-time traversal. If he tried to hold the connection open, the consumption would be enormous. It wouldn't last. Realizing this, Gao Li cut the link. This was only an experiment. He hadn't planned anything yet and could not afford to waste the lottery energy. Still, he was very pleased. His ideas had been correct. A vast prospect lay before him. If I can take the victory team into other worlds, how would people react? Just imagining it is thrilling. Gao Li smiled to himself. The victory team was already an unbeatable force across many worlds, at least in practice. As the head of his organization's vanguard, he had never stopped strengthening them. At first, he only relied on his own tech, but later he began applying concepts gleaned from the Infinity Stones. Gao Li hadn't studied the stones only to extract concepts into the memory driver. Each stone offered unique experimental advantages. The Mind Stone and Reality Stone were invaluable for biological research, protecting subjects mentally and physically. The Space Stone enabled many non-invasive experiments, and in worst-case scenarios, the Time Stone could reverse events, massively improving efficiency. Thanks to that, Stephen Bucky had advanced from the early first and next versions of the number 1 and number 2 Gaizhou technologies through upgraded nano-reformation and now reached modification levels comparable to Kamen Rider Nu 1 and Nu 2. They had become literal powerhouses. Even the extra amplification from the Kamen Rider G4-based armor Gao Li made for them was just icing. Yet that icing itself added several tons, even over 10 tons, pushing both beyond the original Kamen Rider Nu 1 and Nu 2 after transformation. For Natasha and Clint, the upgrades were simpler. With the successful development of Kamen Rider 02, Gao Li temporarily phased out Kamen Rider 001, effectively transferring that parent company tech to Natasha and Clint. They rose to new heights, upgrading to the Metal Cluster Hopper Progress Key and the Rampage Gatling Progress Key, respectively. Gao Li had deliberately balanced the Victory team's internal strengths to avoid glaring weaknesses. The stronger the Victory team, the better they could maintain peace, and the safer Earth would be. In the endless abyss of space stood a palace vast enough to rival ancient galaxies, the Sanctuary. Colossal black sentient ships drifted there, casting a cold light. This was Thanos' throne, and in it burned a terrible fury. On a massive bronze chair sat the Titan known as the Scourge of the Universe, Thanos. His face was carved with power and chill, a countenance that could make galaxies tremble. Today his council chamber was filled with his most loyal followers, the Black Order. Corvus Glaive's sharp eyes were full of ruthless intent. His wife Proxima Midnight stood with imposing posture and battlefield determination. Ebony Maw spoke with a deep, ancient whisper. Supergiant moved with lithe menace, and Black Dwarf's muscles seemed like solidified magma, a warrior hewn from the hardest stone. Thanos stood at the center, his gaze cutting through the chamber and into the depths of each subordinate's soul. We set out on the final journey. The Infinity Stones are both a symbol of power and the key to my goal. The Power Stone is in my hand. Now we require the rest. As light and shadow played across the chamber, he surveyed his followers, the loyalty in their eyes reminding him of an ancient monarch preparing a final war. Nebula's memory has been read. Gamora, my other daughter, she knows the Soul Stone's secret. I will go to find her myself. And you, the Black Order, will be my iron arm. Conquer that blue planet that once humiliated the Chitauri, Earth. Corvus Glaive stepped forward, his grim face revealing hot fighting spirit. Master, we are ready. Let those Earthlings feel our power. Thanos nodded. Corvus was sharp and precise, a veteran at sweeping victories on the battlefield. But this campaign required more than courage. The Infinity Stone's power was strange and varied, and Earth was not undefended. There were extraordinary beings there who also wielded great power. Proxima Midnight, your speed, Ebony Maw, your wisdom, you each have strengths. I trust you. However, the powerful on Earth may have mastered elements of the stones. You must deal with that. Thanos' voice stirred Proxima Midnight. She bowed in silent resolve. Thank you, Master. Those fools may be at peace now, but soon the storm will arrive. Ebony Maw, ever cerebral, stroked his chin. Countless intelligences have bowed to your majesty. Earth will not be an exception. I shall serve your plan with my wisdom. Supergiant remained silent, but radiated threat. I will crush the challengers, whether gods of that world or their strongest warriors. If one can kill me, then I will welcome death, but I doubt they have such strength. Black Dwarf ruffled the sparse wires of hair on his head with a hint of indifference. Practical and direct, he preferred devastation to rhetoric. If necessary, I will make them feel despair. My axe doesn't need fancy tricks, enough to make any enemy submit. Thanos accepted their oaths with satisfaction. He was a ruler whose ambition spanned galaxies. The Black Order was the extension of his will. Remember, Earth may seem insignificant in the cosmos, but the power it harbors cannot be underestimated. Do not be careless. Depart now. Let the universe witness our might. The Black Order answered in unison, their forms fading into corridors of light and shadow. Thanos remained alone, eyes closed, breathing deep, as he imagined how he would spend the rest of his life after having the universe. He had no doubt the world would dance to his will, and he would conduct that endless symphony. Earth teetered on the brink. The Black Order set out, heading toward the Blue Planet, to start a brilliant and brutal war. Their intelligence indicated TPC, the largest and strongest defense force on Earth, would be their primary opponent. The Black Order debated tactics on the way. If we move with an armada, we'll be noticed. Earth's defenses are significant. If they react and hide the stones, it will be troublesome. They decided on a vanguard strike, swift and sudden to catch Earth unprepared and prevent the hiding of the Infinity Stones. According to preliminary intelligence, the stones on Earth were concentrated in 3 places. The most stones were at TPC headquarters, where many scientists researched the Time Stone and the Reality Stone. Gao Li had many projects, and even with Tony and Bruce, he delegated research to his subordinates. Gao Li himself handled a great deal. The Mind Stone was in the World Tree Building's laboratory and was constantly studied by him. Bruce and Tony cooperated on the Space Stone research. Gao Li already had the most thorough understanding of the Space Stone and no longer needed to study it intensively, but Bruce and Tony were deeply interested. This was roughly the distribution of the 4 Infinity Stones, and the Black Order quickly assigned tasks. Proxima midnight, you go to the World Tree Building to steal the Mind Stone. We'll allocate forces based on the number of stones. The more stones in a location, the better the defenses and the more experts required. Corvus Glaive and I will go to TPC headquarters, where the most stones are. We must strike simultaneously so they cannot react. We have to disperse our forces. Ebony Maw, famed for strategy, planned the operation. Stark Tower is Black Dwarf's target. Supergiant, you are skilled in telepathy, mind control, mental transfer, and memory theft. You'll be an excellent support and can assist all 3 parties with your mental transfer. In Ebony Maw's design, a lightning strike would secure the stones. This wasn't arrogance. The Black Order's members were genuine elites. Supergiant's support abilities made her invaluable. Black Dwarf, tasked with challenging Tony and Bruce, was confident. Intelligence suggested Iron Man's forms lacked raw strength. His vulnerability, Black Dwarf could exploit. In the original timeline, Black Dwarf's strength matched the Hulkbuster armor, giving Tony's nano armor trouble on several occasions. Black Dwarf's defense was among the Black Order's strongest. Many of Iron Man's attacks barely damaged him. Ebony Maw himself was formidable, brilliant strategist and master of telekinesis. His psychokinesis activated quickly, without long preparation. In the original timeline, he once captured Doctor Strange with ease. Corvus Glaive was no weakling either. Strength, speed, and defense beyond human limits, and most terrifyingly, a self-healing ability tied to his weapon. As long as Corvus's weapon remained intact, he could come back from death again and again. Proxima Midnight, Corvus's wife, was equally powerful and arguably superior in combat skill. Her spear could lock onto 3 targets, and its rays could melt all matter. P.S. Regarding power levels here, the official data lists Spider-Man level 4, Iron Man level 6, and Hulk level 7, which doesn't fully reflect their MCU portrayals. In the MCU, Black Dwarf and the Hulkbuster are comparable in strength, and Spider-Man isn't that far behind, but Iron Man has repeatedly been overwhelmed by Black Dwarf. I've adjusted the strengths to fit actual performance, drawing from both MCU and some comic canon. Supergiant, for example, exists in the comics but not the MCU. 230. Chapter 228. You are courting death. Enemy attack. Enemy attack. Alarms shattered the calm at TPC headquarters. Corvus Glaive and Ebony Maw descended like a storm into the base's core, materializing through Supergiant's mental transfer. Corvus's Warblade whipped up a whirlwind of destruction with his astonishing strength and martial prowess, while Ebony Maw used telekinesis with the casual mastery of a rider cracking a whip. TPC soldiers nearby were all but helpless. Soon more than half were dead or wounded. The victory team arrived quickly, but the scene filled them with fury. Corvus Glaive and Ebony Maw stood amid ruins, a heavy, ominous aura hanging about them. At their feet lay piles of corpses, a sea of blood. "You two, who are you?" Steve clenched his fists, the grip of his anger like a promise of violence. Ebony Maw and Corvus ignored them, speaking as if no one else existed. It took time, but through Supergiant's memory theft, we discovered the exact locations of the Infinity Stones. We will now They had already known the stone's general areas, but for a facility as large as TPC headquarters, Ebony Maw and Corvus hadn't known the precise sites. Now they did. Captain, they're ignoring you. We need to teach them the cost of underestimating us. Transform. Natasha's smile was cold and resolute. She drew her progressiki, slotted it into the driver, and metallic light flared around her. Progress. Let's rise. Lee, let's rise. Let's rise. Lee, let's rise. Metal rise. Secret material. X-metal. Metal cluster hopper. High quality. Little Naz right. Clint spun his Rampage Gatling progress key. Transform. Rampage bullet. All rise. Progress. Gathering round. Rampage Gatling. The power of these progress keys gathers into great force. Clint, clad in the Rampage Gatling armor, looked like a man on fire with icy calm. It's time to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. Transform. Bucky's stance was more determined than ever. The double Typhoon armor formed over him, every muscle now carrying tens of tons of force. Transform! Steve transformed as well. The four of them in their armored forms finally caught Corvus Glaive and Ebony Maw's attention. Section 213, Surrender. Steve's voice was low and steady, powerful enough to cut through the chaos. Too many people have died today. We don't want any more. Of course, if I'm being honest, I'd prefer you didn't surrender. Corvus Glaive looked up, chin high, a mocking smile on his face. Talking about surrender in front of me? How arrogant, how foolish. Ebony Maw said nothing, but his gaze was full of scorn, silent contempt that spoke volumes. Are you even worthy to face us? Captain, Clint warned, narrowing his eyes. They really want us to pay. Conflict erupted without further warning. Corvus Glaive hefted his gleaming warblade and charged. Ebony Maw's telekinesis rolled across the ground like an invisible storm, hurling up debris that became a lethal barrage of projectiles. Natasha's metal, atomic cluster armor split into a swarm of locust-like shards that fluttered across the battlefield and formed an unseen net. Steve, moving with astonishing agility and strength, launched a direct kick at Corvus. Natasha met Ebony Maw's eerie power head-on. Her metallic swarms corroded and shattered anything they touched, breaking apart even the constructs he threw at them. Bang, bang, bang! Clint's guns spoke in a relentless staccato. Each shot carried dangerous energy. Bullets laced with fire and ice tore through the air like a furious gatling of wasp stingers. Bucky's muscles surged with an ancient bestial power. The force behind his 100-ton kicks drove Corvus to dodge and pushed his regenerative limits. From the outset, Victory Team unleashed a brutal, coordinated onslaught that overwhelmed Corvus Glaive and Ebony Maw. The Black Order had expected to crush lesser foes with their might, but they hadn't counted on Earth's defenders being so ferocious. How can this be? Corvus hissed between blows. Their power, even in the universe, this would be top tier, and they're just from Earth? Steve's strikes were sharper than anything Corvus had felt in a long time. Bucky's impacts forced the Glaive's rapid healing to work overtime. It was only thanks to that astonishing regeneration that Corvus managed to stay upright. Ebony Maw, watching Natasha's virus-like metal locusts eat through his telekinetic constructs, stared in disbelief. Clint's precise, pressure-filled shots backed even a manipulator like him into direct confrontation. The battle swelled to epic proportions. Gunpowder smoke, flashes of energy, shattered stone and ice falling like a metallic snow. Flames braided with frost into a chaotic tapestry of destruction. Every collision sent shockwaves through the base, each explosion a test of endurance and will. The four heroes fed off the momentum, every energy wave both a declaration and a dare. Even as Corvus and Ebony Maw reeled, Victory Team found themselves secretly shocked. That healing speed, this isn't even something a normal living creature should have, Bucky muttered, bones closing up in seconds. Bucky gritted his teeth. If not for that uncanny regeneration, Corvus would already be down. Natasha and Clint shared the worry. Ebony Maw's experience and composure let him adapt to their assaults and hold on under encirclement. The tide had turned into a grinding attrition fight. For Corvus and Ebony Maw, the only question was how long they could hold out. New York. Stark Tower vibrated as the urgent alarm shattered the silence. Tony Stark launched from a sofa, eyes snapping to attention. Huh? Terrorists, he guessed, only half joking. Metallic echoes reverberated through the atrium. Bruce Banner's steady steps followed. He arrived at Tony's side, brow furrowed. Jarvis, what's happening? Unknown signal detected, Jarvis replied. A massive object has appeared in the central hall. Let's go, Tony said. They rushed into the atrium and froze. A colossal figure stood there, Black Dwarf. He was an immovable dark mountain of a man, his skin like void-hardened rock that seemed to swallow light. Even without names exchanged, the intent in those obsidian eyes was clear. He wanted a fight. Hey, you crawled out from under a rock or what? We don't welcome uninvited guests. Tony tried to bluff, voice carrying across the hall, but Black Dwarf showed no interest in conversation. He was here to fight. Tony's chest plate unfolded on a blink, nanotech armor rising along his spine, turning him into a glowing combatant. Last warning, surrender. He primed energy shields and missiles. Hulk, go! Bruce's muscles swelled, clothes tearing apart. Hulk returned, green and furious. He did not bother with protocols. He roared and charged. Hulk smash! Tony sighed, then dove into the fray. The atrium became a battlefield for titans. Floors buckled under impact, glass showered into the sky like stars. Tony's weapons were state-of-the-art, but against Black Dwarf's defenses they were almost ineffectual. Black Dwarf matched Hulk in speed and strength, and above all his invulnerability set him apart from the rest of the Black Order. Tony's repulsor blast shuddered against Dwarf's chest and only pushed him back a few steps. Even the full force of Tony's chest repulsor couldn't dent that rock-like exterior. What is he made of? Tony seethed, half in anger, half in awe. This is ridiculous. Hulk's duel with Black Dwarf was even more volatile. Each collision sounded like an earthquake. Their physical measurements were comparable, but Hulk's fury and brute force style left him at a disadvantage against a seasoned, instinctive fighter like Black Dwarf, who dodged and countered with uncanny timing. Every time Hulk tried to unleash a crushing blow, Black Dwarf slipped the attack and punished the opening. Hulk, dodge! Banner tried to shout through the storm, but coordination was hard when intellect and rage were meshed in one body. Bruce couldn't help much mid-battle. He was a scientist first, not a combat trainer. The fight ground on. Stark Tower creaked and shuddered toward collapse, but Tony and Bruce couldn't afford to stop. If they failed here, Manhattan would pay the price. Cooperate, Tony barked. We can't fight like this. Work together. Side by side, they struck in furious succession, but even combined their assaults only managed to stalemate Black Dwarf. The building groaned under the strain. Tony's mind raced. If the city was erupting like this, the police and National Guard would surely be alerted. If Gao Li hadn't reacted yet, either he hadn't noticed, or worse, he'd been attacked too. Tony's suspicion proved correct. Supergiant had teleported Proxima Midnight straight into the heart of the World Tree Building. Supergiant didn't stick around. His plan wasn't to join the fights, but to exploit Earth's top fighters being tied up. With the Earth heroes distracted, he would capture the informed Earthling and use his memory-reading power to locate the Infinity Stones, the same tactic he had employed at the TPC base. The World Tree Building, Yggdrasil Foundation, had even tighter security than Stark Tower. Ark and Zia were watching the place. Their alarm pinged Gao Li immediately. Gao Li was astonished. Who in their right mind would attack Yggdrasil Foundation? It was like inviting a tiger in. He watched as the intruder materialized. Proxima Midnight, dark armor trimmed in red, eyes cold and distant as a far star. The spear at her hip looked as lethal as it was elegant. There was something alien about her, no face from any Earth criminal roster he knew. This wasn't some supervillain from the usual files. It felt like an extraterrestrial threat. So, Gao Li said, keeping his expression blank, state your name. I am Proxima Midnight, a master of combat known across the universe. Proxima Midnight sneered. And yet you act like you've never heard of me. Earth is as backward and barbaric as they say. Gao Li sighed and shook his head. Do you know what usually happens to opponents who show that much arrogance before a fight? Never mind. I'll just use you to test my new equipment. From a remote, backward, and barbaric land, mind you. He emphasized the insult deliberately. The 02 driver was already fastened to his waist. With his left hand, he opened it, and with his right, he pulled out the 02 progressive key. 02 jump. Let's give you power. Let's give you power. Let's give you power. As he pressed the key, a holographic projection of the Zia satellite flared to life above the driver. Proxima Midnight scoffed. She had seen technology from many planets and wasn't easily impressed. and lunged. But two enormous mechanical locusts, one yellow and one red, descended from the sky and planted themselves on either side of Gao Li like guardian sentinels. The force of their landing gouged deep pits in the ground. Proxima Midnight paused, cautious now. Transform! Gao Li slid the two Progressiki into the driver. He hadn't intended to transform at first. Becoming Kamen Rider 02 had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, but he also had the physical strength to back it up, and the locusts were programmed to protect their user. 02, Rise, Road to Glory, Path to Growth, Change 1 to 2, Kamen Rider 02. It's never over. Armor swept over him, sleek and imposing, folding quantum energies through and around his body. The air seemed to warp, space itself rippled. Gao Li pointed and said evenly, "Let's do this one-on-one." Proxima Midnight exploded forward like a meteor, a spinning kick carving a perfect arc toward him. Gao Li's armor completed its calculations in a heartbeat. He slipped aside, dodging as if the move had been expected. "What? He dodged that so easily?" she muttered, stunned. Realizing this opponent wasn't like the others, she raised her spear and unleashed a flurry of silver light. 3 deadly halos chased his figure. Gao Li's body shimmered and split into 3, an effect of the quantum device on his chest that projected multiple possible outcomes as near-physical clones. The spear halos cut through the illusions. The real Gao Li had already slipped behind her and said coldly, "You still don't understand. Brute force like that is useless against me." Boastful. Proxima Midnight snapped, fury flaring. She spun and swung legs like scythes, but Gao Li dissolved into another illusion and reassembled on the other side. Fist shadow, leg shadow, spear shadow. Her techniques were met by ghostly counters, every attack neutralized as if anticipated. She lashed out with a 3-pronged spear blast. Gao Li's armor blossomed with light and fractured into moving images that danced among the beams. "I should have said it already," he said calmly, his voice ringing through the building. "Your attacks have been read. They won't work." Those words stung. Proxima Midnight had never had her ultimate technique so casually dismissed. She flickered to his left and drove a punch into his chest. Gao Li moved with uncanny rhythm. The blow struck only air. "I've already calculated your speed, too," he said. Her breathing grew ragged. The stars embroidered on her battle robe dimmed. Every move she had ever relied on, every killing technique that had made foes tremble, felt useless before Gao Li. He countered with merciless efficiency, his strikes like inevitabilities. Before long, the warrior who had once dominated planets lay bloodied and battered, face streaked with crimson. Gao Li pressed the 2 Progressiki again. Energy rippled outward. 02 Big Bang. Electronic light wrapped Gao Li's right foot. He slammed into Proxima Midnight with a flying kick delivered at super speed, then followed with a chain of rapid strikes. Each hit bloomed a giant electronic 02 symbol where it landed. With a final, thunderous kick, he pierced through her defenses. Her body tumbled through the air and hit the ground with a heavy thud. Proxima Midnight coughed and struggled to breathe. She lay on the cold floor, strength leaking fast. Gao Li walked over slowly, voice flat. "You lost." She lifted a fading gaze, confusion and unwillingness in her eyes. "The intelligence didn't mention this kind of power. Who are you?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Gao Li didn't answer directly. He cocked his head. "You even did intel on me first. Organized and premeditated. What force sent you?" "I won't tell you," she rasped. Her pupils dilated. "I only regret my insufficient strength." Gao Li sighed softly. "You only had one reason for defeat, Proxima Midnight." His voice was emotionless. "Insufficient strength would be one thing, but you shouldn't have provoked me." Proxima Midnight's life slipped away. Her exhausted body could no longer hold her spirit. She sank into the eternal black. Gao Li shook his head. If she'd been less fragile, he might have been able to extract information. Still, her presence proved a point. Others from the universe were operating on Earth. Zia confirmed his suspicion, pulling up feeds and data. Battles were currently raging at Stark Tower and TPC headquarters as well. Gao Li considered the 3 hotspots, TPC, Stark Tower, World Tree Building, and noted the common thread. All 3 places housed Infinity Stones. Their objective was almost certainly the Infinity Stones. Gao Li decided he would keep the Mind Stone with him for now, then go assist where needed. He flickered in his armor and took the Mind Stone. Scanning the battlefield, he found the TPC base was already under control. The victory team held the upper hand. Stark Tower, however, was less certain. As he focused on that feed, someone new popped up. A lean figure in red and blue, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, joined the fight. "Hey, Mr. Stark, Mr. Banner, need any help?" Peter called. Hulk had just snatched the axe hurled by Black Dwarf. Tony Stark, directing energy cannons, looked up. "Peter, why are you here? This battlefield isn't for a kid." The school had a spring outing nearby, and I saw a huge commotion," Peter babbled. "Anyway, I'm not a kid. I'm Spider-Man. I handle criminals, New York's friendly neighborhood." Tony's indignation flared. "Wait, are you saying I'm inferior to Gao Li?" "Aye." Before Tony could finish, Black Dwarf sent him flying with an axe. Hulk then kicked Black Dwarf down several floors. I didn't say anything," Peter added, spreading his hands and leaping into action. Tony, humiliated, lashed out with everything he had. Full salvo. His armor pushed to maximum output. Stark Tower filled with blinding fire and deafening explosions. Energy beams, missiles, lasers, pouring down like a tempest on Black Dwarf. Each strike cracked walls and shook the air. Black Dwarf roared, swinging his giant hammer, immovable under the barrage. But the onslaught had its effect. Peter noticed the alien's aura dimming, blood searing from his mouth and nose. Black Dwarf's reactions confirmed internal injury. He howled like a wounded beast, eyes burning with savage fury for the human before him. He advanced, each heavy step making the floor quake. Then several strong webs shot out. Peter had wrapped him and yanked with all his might. Black Dwarf stumbled, stunned and off balance. Hulk seized the moment and delivered a punishing punch that sent Black Dwarf crashing to the ground once more. Section 215. With Peter's arrival like the last straw, the whole battle shifted at once. The scales of victory began to tip rapidly toward Earth. At the space stone's emplacement, the air twisted and Supergiant materialized. After repeatedly stealing memories, she had finally located the Infinity Stones. The blue glow before her was the Space Stone. She composed herself and reached out. 02 Big Bang! A tremendous force and blinding flash struck Supergiant like thunder. Gao Li had appeared. Seeing Peter join the fight, Gao Li realized Black Dwarf's defeat was all but certain, and that his help wasn't needed there. The victory team at TPC base was on the verge of victory, so where should he go next? Of course, to the stones. If 4 had come for the stones, there had to be a 5th retrieving them. With regular troops guarding the Infinity Stones at the TPC base, Stark Tower was the more vulnerable target. He acted on that logic. As he had predicted, Supergiant headed for Stark Tower. Gao Li moved to intercept and unleashed a decisive finishing blow. Supergiant flinched. Though she courted death and had been subdued by Thanos for it, her first loyalty was still to the mission. Her suicidal streak only made her steadier in combat. She could coldly prioritize the task at hand. She countered with a full blast of psychic power. Gao Li felt his head spin. His 02 Big Bang strayed mid-flight and missed. Supergiant smiled faintly, about to seize the Space Stone, when Gao Li's body shimmered like an afterimage. The Mind Stone he carried should have been useless without an interface like the Infinity Gauntlet, and usually it couldn't defend against Supergiant's power. But the 02 Armor's quantum leap systems activated on their own and tapped into countless parallel probabilities. In an astronomically rare alignment, a 1 in a billion chance, the Mind Stone resonated with Supergiant's psychic fluctuations and, like a pebble swallowing the ripple it created, absorbed and nullified her psychic attack. Gao Li corrected his trajectory automatically and kicked again. Supergiant's expression froze. For the first time, she hesitated. There simply wasn't time to puzzle it out. She abandoned the Space Stone and fled through psychic transmission. Gao Li's kick detonated the after-image she left, but Supergiant had escaped. He rose from the blast, frustrated. Forget it. TPC base is the last place. Whoever came for the stones won't give up on it. Before heading straight to TPC, Gao Li glanced back at the rest of the fight. With Peter's help, Black Dwarf was already being beaten bloody by a trio. Peter might look slight, but he had superhuman strength and had been holding back to avoid killing, until now. Seeing Black Dwarf, whose power rivaled the Hulk's, Peter let loose every ounce of strength. If nothing unexpected happened, Black Dwarf would be finished. Gao Li didn't wait. He teleported onto the battlefield and, without a word to Tony and Peter, struck to finish the job. 02 Big Bang! From the onlooker's point of view, a blue-green light flashed and Kamen Rider 02 appeared out of nowhere. Gowley's colleagues recognized the armor at a glance. He drove his boot into Black Dwarf's head, sparks and lightning flying, and sent the giant tumbling like a shot put. Blood sprayed from his mouth and other orifices. He was badly hurt. Huh. I aimed for a vital point but couldn't finish him like I did with Proxima Midnight. No wonder Tony and the Hulk fought so long. He's tough. Gowley signaled to Tony and the others to press the attack, then vanished in a flash. TPC headquarters. The battle had reached its final stage. Double rider kick, metal rising impact, rampage Gatling blast fever. 4 powerful attacks rose together and slammed into Corvus Glaive. The explosion was massive, a wave of fire that lit the sky and rattled nearby buildings. Ebony Maw, who had already used telekinesis to pull back, was hurled and sent bones cracking from the shock. He dropped to the ground, coughing, stunned by how wrong his intelligence had been. This victory team was far stronger than reported. In the center of the blast, a mushroom cloud of fire and smoke rolled outward. Facilities were shattered, debris littered the ground, and the stench of burning hung in the air. Corvus Glaive's body was reduced to charred fragments. The 4 riders' combined rider kicks had overwhelmed even his rapid regeneration. He was beaten to death beyond death. The 4 members of the victory team stood amid the flames and stared coldly at Ebony Maw. Now it's your turn. Ebony Maw shook, but his telekinesis launched him away like a maglev train. Don't run, the team cried and gave chase. They knew it might be a trap, but the battle had already moved 100 meters from its starting point. Fighting anywhere inside the TPC base was essentially the same. They weren't about to let the enemy take the headquarters. Ebony Maw, however, understood the difference. He had already relayed the Infinity Stone's location to Corvus and Supergiant. Corvus had gone straight for the stones. After the victory team left, Corvus Glaive's motionless remains stirred. The on-site commanders had assumed the shredded, charred body was beyond revival. He had been reduced to 15 or 20 pieces, his volume perhaps a fifth of what it had been. Most of him had been dust. Yet somehow, Corvus could still revive. The ability itself defied human comprehension. Corvus had once been arrogant enough to disdain stealth, but now he relied on it. Supergiant's psychic transmissions had coordinated the battlefields. Before she left for Stark Tower, she had informed Corvus and Ebony Maw of the stone's location at TPC. So Corvus went straight to the lab. The base troops weren't slouches. The soldiers nearest those labs confronted him and formed a cordon. Corvus's sneer thundered over the carnage as he ripped through their ranks. Bullets and laser fire streaked, but each wound he received knit over in moments. "You tiny earthlings, how dare you oppose me?" he mocked as he disappeared and reappeared, slashing through a soldier from behind. Accurate shots could do little against his regeneration. A young soldier shouted, "His self-repair is too strong. Nothing works." A special squad decided to disperse and attack from different directions. Maria volunteered to draw his attention, weaving through the ruins to bait Corvus's strikes with agility nearly comparable to Natasha pre-transformation. Her captain warned, "Maria, be careful," but she pressed on, trying to find an opening as the others suppressed him. Corvus roared, and his power seemed to swell. He swung his warblade and sent soldiers sprawling, shredding the base's defensive line. "Lure him out. TPC's heavy guns can't reach the core area," the captain ordered. The center of the base was essentially sealed. They cooperated, but morale was slipping. Maria misjudged for a moment and felt a searing pain as Corvus's blade sliced through her armor, leaving a deep wound. She grit her teeth and stayed in the fight. "Maria, are you all right?" the captain asked over the comms. "I'm fine. Keep attacking," she replied. Everyone on site fought like it mattered, because it did. Then a brilliant beam of blue light descended from the sky and wrapped around Corvus. He roared as an unyielding force held him fast. "Enough!" Gowley's voice thundered from beyond the light. He had come straight from Stark Tower, having kicked Black Dwarf, and now arrived as Kamen Rider Zone. Using space power, he had materialized instantly and used his zone memory to solidify space itself, forcibly restraining Corvus Glaive. The zone memory's extraordinary compatibility with Gao Li allowed him to unleash techniques far more potent than a memory simply extracted from an infinity stone. Chapter 231, Gao Li vs. Thanos. After immobilizing Corvus Glaive, Gao Li's expression flickered as he scanned the scene. He had restrained Corvus instead of killing him for two reasons. First, he didn't want to repeat the mistake he'd made with Proxima Midnight, accidentally killing her and leaving no one alive to question. Second, he genuinely wanted to know why Corvus had shown up here. From the intelligence Zia had provided, Corvus had been an enemy of the Victory team before. How had he bypassed them and got here? That shouldn't have been possible. The Victory team had the upper hand, and killing the two enemies should have been only a matter of time. They wouldn't be careless enough to let one slip away. The battle with the Victory team, Corvus Glaive and Ebony Maw, had been so intense that the surrounding monitoring equipment was destroyed by residual energy. No one had seen Corvus's resurrection. Gao Li's grim mood had another cause. TPC's casualties were greater than he'd expected. The Black Order was even stronger than he'd imagined. Without vanguards like the Victory team or other superheroes to resist them, the Black Order could achieve overwhelming victories against TPC forces. This wasn't because TPC was weak. TPC was strong, but their strengths lay elsewhere. Infantry combat and special operations were the Victory team's domain. TPC's heavy weaponry, the kind that fought monsters, couldn't be deployed in the base's core area and couldn't handle highly mobile humanoid enemies like the Black Order. Otherwise, a single direct hit from a max cannon on Corvus Glaive would have exceeded his regeneration and killed him instantly. As TPC director, Gao Li normally wouldn't consider using the time memory to revive personnel who died in combat. There were two main reasons. The first, and most important, was that the timeline couldn't withstand repeated manipulation. The amount of time Gao Li could reverse was limited. If he constantly sent time backwards several times a day to save people, the timeline itself would collapse from the meddling. The second reason was practical. TPC was the world's largest military organization. Missions and casualties happened constantly. If he had to revive every fallen TPC member, Gao Li would have no time for anything else. He would spend his whole life reversing time. And the time memory's compatibility with Gao Li was poor. He relied on a modified physiology to endure its side effects. If he accumulated too much damage, he might die long before the timeline broke. The number of TPC casualties this time, however, justified a time reversal. The problem was he would also have to stop the Black Order's conspiracy again. Since Gao Li had acted immediately this time, there had been no time differential to exploit. Even if he tried again, he might not do better than he already had. At least, as things stood, no Infinity Stone had been lost. He'd cut short the Black Order's plan before it could succeed. Strategically, Gao Li still had the upper hand. Maybe, he thought, if he did it again and used Kamen Rider Kabuto's speed, he could eliminate the enemies faster and save even more people. Gao Li pulled out the zone memory from the lost driver, planning to insert the time memory. He had already begun the motion instinctively. Even if repeating the reversal might not be much better than before, he could save one more person. That alone made it worth the risk. Time. He removed the zone memory, intending to slot in the time memory. Then, an unexpected change occurred. At the place where the Time Stone and Reality Stone had been, space twisted, and two figures appeared, Thanos and Supergiant. Supergiant had told Corvus earlier the exact location of the Infinity Stones, so she could teleport directly with Thanos now. But the timing was impeccable. It was the instant Gao Li had pulled out the zone memory before he could switch to the time memory. It was like a kung fu master landing a strike in the split second between moves. In the brief interval, when the old power had been exhausted, but the new one hadn't yet engaged, Gao Li couldn't perfectly use either the zone or the time memory. According to how Gao Li had set the lost driver, removing a memory briefly wouldn't revert a transformation entirely. Some residual power would remain. That explained how he'd used the time memory to immobilize Ultron and the Iron Legion before switching drivers. He exploited residual ability. But residual ability wasn't the same as a complete linkage. To exert a memory's full effect, it had to be inserted into the driver. Gao Li was now in a very awkward spot. He only had the zone memory's basic functions left and couldn't perform the space lock like before. The time memory was even worse. Only passive effects remained. He couldn't employ active temporal attacks. He had pressed the time memory's button, but it hadn't been inserted, and his compatibility with time was lower than with zone. Supergiant's timing was brilliant. Gao Li didn't believe in coincidence. In truth, he didn't yet understand Supergiant's abilities. She was an expert in mental powers and had secretly linked herself to Corvus. Although Corvus was immobilized and couldn't move, his mind still functioned and could perceive the scene. Intelligence had already reported that Gao Li could use Infinity Stone powers through technology. That was why Thanos had specifically told the Black Order that the Earthlings might harness the Infinity Stones. Whatever the reasoning, Thanos now had a small edge. Unhesitatingly, he reached and grabbed the Time Stone. "You wish!" Gao Li shouted, shocked and furious. The time memory had finally been inserted into the Lost Driver. At the same moment, Thanos placed the Time Stone into the Infinity Gauntlet. Time. They both activated temporal power. Gao Li completed his transformation just as the Time Stone slid home. Thanos gritted his teeth against the stone's backlash. Each launched a temporal attack. Gao Li raised his hand at Thanos, while Thanos clenched his fist. Two emerald force fields expanded and collided violently. Almost without stalemate, Thanos' emerald wave overpowered Gao Li's, suppressing it and spreading across the area. Although both the memory and the Infinity Gauntlet channeled Time Stone energy, the Gauntlet used the stone directly, and Gao Li's time memory was less compatible with him, so it fell short in power. When Gao Li's temporal field contracted back into him, it merely shielded him. Everyone around was frozen in place. "Tsk!" One step behind, Gao Li muttered, teeth clenched, but he didn't give up. He quickly inserted the zone memory into the maximum slot. He was going to forcefully use two memories with one body. The extreme memory could be used this way because of its unique properties, though that didn't mean all memories could be. Even with his modified physique, Gao Li risked severe injury. Both zone and time were top-tier concepts derived from Infinity Stones. Still, in that moment, he gambled that his upgraded body could endure it. Zone. Maximum Drive. He activated the Zone Maximum Drive, trying to seal the entire space, to lock Thanos and Supergiant in place. This wasn't a restraint like the one used on Corvus. It was total confinement. No spatial abilities would work. Even light would stagnate. Those inside couldn't perceive anything outside, and neural transmissions could halt because space itself was motionless. But Thanos wasn't standing still. He clenched his fist again. The Power Stone glowed purple, and an immense explosion erupted from him, spreading outward. Gao Li's pupils contracted. At the critical moment, he changed his plan. With a whoosh, he forced Thanos and Supergiant, and the massive explosion they had generated, out, slingshotting them into outer space. It was as if he tore a patch out of the scene and flung it far away. Everyone frozen around him remained unharmed by the Power Stone's blast, but Gao Li's face went pale. He'd fallen into their trap, and it was an open, straightforward one that he'd had no choice but to accept. To transfer that explosion completely away, I had to excavate the entire volume the blast was occupying, he thought, teeth gritted. And the opponent was too close to the Reality Stone. While excavating that space, I had to include the Reality Stone. In doing so, Gao Li had essentially handed the Reality Stone to Thanos. He understood the mechanics with a moment's thought, but he'd had to do it. The Power Stone's blast wasn't ordinary fire. It was purple energy, the Power Stone's direct emission, another Infinity Stone-level force. Gao Li wasn't confident he could have fixed that explosive force with the Zone Maximum Drive. A miscalculation would have meant the death of everyone in the TPC headquarters. For an Infinity Stone, destroying a star was trivial. Ordinary TPC armor or Kamen Rider suits couldn't withstand it if unleashed fully. The problem was Gao Li couldn't know how far Thanos would push the Power Stone, so he chose the most cautious approach. Theoretically, Gao Li could have used the time memory to save everyone even if they died. In reality, though, with Thanos now wielding the Time Stone, Gao Li's reversals might be thwarted. The smallest possibility of that happening was enough to make a death final. Among the potential victims were not only subordinates, but also friends like Steve and Bucky. Gao couldn't accept that. Thanos understood this exactly. Supergiant teleported herself and Thanos back to the sanctuary. Thanos put the reality stone into the gauntlet as well. 4 infinity stones are now in my hand. Not exactly as planned, but more than half, he said, looking at the gauntlet with a steely calm. Supergiant hesitated. Master, Proxima Midnight is dead. My telepathic link with Ebony Maw and Black Dwarf is severed. Corvus Glaive is unlikely to survive. They are all likely in grave danger. 4 of the Black Order lost. It's hardly a complete victory, Supergiant added. Thanos shrugged. No matter. The power bonus from a single Infinity Stone is enough to surpass the rest of the Black Order. Sacrifices on the road to a great goal are inevitable, noble even. Future generations will remember them, and I will remember them, he said. With Supergiant, he could speak plainly. She had a certain self-destructive streak and wouldn't be unsettled by such words. After a few seconds, Thanos' gaze drifted toward Earth, as if piercing space itself. Gori Parker, he is not the only one cursed with knowledge. His wisdom and ability warrant my attention. He shook his head slightly. But he cannot earn my respect. He lacked the resolve to abandon his friends and family for the greater good. That's why he lost to me. In that brief confrontation at TPC headquarters, both men had used their methods, and because Gori was hampered by his attachments, Thanos had gained the slight advantage. My master, what shall we do next? Supergiant asked. Attack, Thanos said. Chapter 232, Peculiar Technology Tree. Moreover, Thanos added after a pause, to achieve this with only one of the Black Order remaining is already a very good result. Section 217, immediately mobilize the entire Black Order and launch a full-scale assault on Earth. Thanos ordered without hesitation. So soon? Supergiant blinked. We just finished the last major battle. Speed is everything, Thanos said coldly. The leader of Earth's resistance, Gori, is competent. We can't give him time to react. The more time he has, the more the operation's outcome becomes uncertain. We must secure every Infinity Stone and wipe out half the life in the universe at once. TPC headquarters. The blast tore through the base. Steve, Bucky, Natasha, and Clint's combined ultimate attack struck Ebony Maw almost at once and seemed to obliterate the famed telepath. Cornered and pursued by the Victory Team's 4 members, Ebony Maw had felt like he was being hunted by the entire Black Order. After the explosion, time itself momentarily froze, an effect of Thanos' power. Then Thanos departed the base. Gori used the time memory to unfreeze the moment. To everyone else, the process was imperceptible. One moment they had killed their enemy and were breathing out in relief. The next, Gori solemnly summoned them. In the TPC director's office, Gori didn't waste time. TPC headquarters has been hit, he said. 2 Infinity Stones were taken, the Time Stone and the Reality Stone. What? The Victory Team erupted. We clearly destroyed the invaders. How could stones be stolen? Clint demanded. Gori's face hardened. Not just the TPC headquarters. World Tree Tower and Stark Tower were hit too. He opened a live feed from the battered Stark Tower. In the flickering video, a disheveled Peter sat nearby as Tony stood with only half of his nanotech armor functioning and Bruce had returned to his human form. Behind them, the corpse of Black Dwarf could be seen. As expected, you were hit as well, Tony rasped. I'd be curious how TPC fared. Here we handled it. Peter looked sheepish. Mr. Stark, weren't we in over our heads a bit? Tony coughed theatrically. My lord speaks. Children don't interrupt. Gori did not mock. This was no time for levity. From what we could learn, the attackers were 5 in number, aliens known across the cosmos as the Black Order. 4 of the Black Order have fallen on Earth, Gori continued. Their leader is Thanos. He's a madman who intends to collect all the Infinity Stones and wipe out half of all life. Silence fell. Bucky asked, Gori, how do you know so much? We were just attacked. What happened? Gori explained. One of the Black Order was Corvus Glaive, the alien with the warblade you killed earlier. They stared. You mean he wasn't dead after all that? He wasn't. He was resurrected by his blade. As long as his warblade remains intact, Corvus can come back. That blade is the source of his powerful healing. After capturing him, I extracted his memories with the Mind Stone. Everything, Thanos, the Black Order, and Thanos' goal, came from Corvus's memory. Unless Corvus managed to resist the stone's power, the information should be accurate. He paused. Corvus held no value as a hostage. He killed many of our people. After I pulled the information, I damaged his blade and ended him. Steve ran a hand over his face. We should have destroyed that weapon back then, but hindsight won't change things. Why does Thanos want to exterminate half of all life? Bruce asked. Is he just a mass murderer for the thrill? Gowley's expression went colder. According to Corvus, Thanos believes the universe's resources are fixed while its life forms are too numerous. He thinks having the population will create a better world with plenty for those who remain. He's traveled to many planets and randomly slaughtered half their populations. He's killed countless lives and still found it inefficient. So he forced someone to make an infinity gauntlet so the stones could be wielded together, Gowley said. With all 6 stones, he could achieve his goal with a single snap. The team was horrified. Natasha asked, "How many stones does Thanos have now?" I fought Thanos briefly not long ago, Gowley said. At that time, his gauntlet held 2 stones. Now, plus the 2 stolen from Earth, he should have 4 stones in total. That means the remaining 2 stones are still on Earth, Tony muttered. He'll focus here. We're the last line of defense for half the universe. Tony's voice turned serious. Bruce and I are part of the victory team. We thought we'd repelled the attack, but in truth, we lost ground. Gowley, you're our director and our commanding officer. What do you want us to do? Gowley had already decided. I already sent orders. Every TPC headquarters and branch is to enter Level 1 combat readiness. Stay alert at all times for Black Order attacks. Zia and Ark will monitor Earth around the clock to prevent surprise assaults. Peter raised a tentative hand. You said Thanos has destroyed many worlds. What kind of civilizations did he wipe out? If those planets were primitive, okay, but if they were high-tech like ours and couldn't stop him, can Earth possibly resist? The question struck them all like a blow. Earth hadn't left its solar system. Could they stand against an enemy who'd crushed entire interstellar civilizations? Gowley inhaled, then held up 2 fingers. Bad news and good news. They leaned in. The bad news? Corvus's memories show Thanos has destroyed countless civilizations, primitive tribes, advanced interstellar societies, even some with tech levels close to Earth's. None survived in the face of Thanos and the Black Order. The only difference was the length of their resistance. The room felt heavier than iron. Steve's jaw clenched. We can't surrender. This is TPC. It's our duty to fight. Gowley's mouth twitched once. Don't misunderstand me. I told you the truth so you could steel yourselves. Now for the good news. He tapped his chest. None of those civilizations had me. He wasn't boasting. Gowley's accelerate mode and other technologies put TPC's capabilities far above what Corvus labeled as the most advanced interstellar tech. With Gowley's enhancements, Earth's military could stand toe-to-toe with many advanced civilizations. It didn't mean victory was guaranteed, but it meant they had leverage. Hey, this isn't a time for flexing, Tony grumbled. My tech raised Earth's tech level, didn't it? I'm top tier in the universe. If we're talking about your early inventions, they were interstellar frontrunners, Gowley said. But your breakthroughs in the last year or 2 are world-class, first tier in the galaxy. Tony rubbed his chin, satisfied. Gowley continued, some of Tony's technologies are not unique in the universe, upper middle tier elsewhere. But he has a few inventions that alien civilizations simply can't reproduce. Think of it like a genius in the Middle Ages who has the ideas but lacks the means. Tony's in that position, ideas too advanced for his environment, until recently. Gowley's point was clear. If we go all out and use everything at our disposal, we have a fighting chance against Thanos and the Black Order. We need to strengthen TPC and Earth's defenses as fast as possible, but Thanos, from Corvus's memory, is an astute strategist. He won't give us much time. Clint's worry was obvious. They could strike at any moment. How do we beef up Earth's defenses that fast? Gowley laid out a plan. First, contact Wakanda immediately. Explain the threat and ask them to join us. Don't be fooled by Wakanda's outward appearance. They have Earth's most advanced technology. If Thanos acquires all the stones, there won't be anywhere left to hide. Second, develop elite combat forces. Against the Black Order, Earth's sheer manpower won't matter. The Black Order can field far larger armies. Corvus's memories described the Black Order's basic troops as the vanguard, biological weapons engineered to be fearless with superhuman physiques. Thanos can mass-produce them. A single vanguard may require multiple soldiers to fell. So we must exploit our advantage. Elite fighters, Gao Li said. We must focus on quality over quantity. Bucky frowned. Do the Black Order even have elite units, or are their elites weaker than ours? Gao Li gave a wry look. Their elites were taken care of. By you. Thanos often doesn't bother with specialized elites. Except for covert operations like today, he usually pushes forward with vanguards. Elite forces aren't his approach. Good, Bucky said, visibly relieved. Gao Li continued, now it's about how many new elite fighters we can create before Thanos strikes. It's a race. Tony scoffed. Masters take time to train. You can't conjure 100 heroes overnight. Will Thanos let us have that time? For rapid results, you could field an Iron Man army, Gao Li said. But after Ultron, I didn't allow mass production of suits. Powerful suits require high precision. Mass-producing nano-armor, like mine, isn't realistic. Your Iron Man army would be useful, but even they'd be inferior to your personal armor. My plan is similar, Gao Li said. We can find people who can transform into Kamen Riders. But Kamen Rider systems require specific users. G3, the easiest to mass-produce, still demands extremely high physical fitness. Screening enough qualified personnel is difficult, so quantity will be limited. He paused. However, if we prioritize quality, a few powerful riders could offset the lack of numbers. I can seek candidates who can wield memories based on Infinity Stone concepts. Everyone understood at once. A single rider with time manipulation could neutralize dozens of ordinary soldiers. The idea was to use select high-impact fighters rather than a massive infantry. Bruce asked, where will you find people who can adapt to memory so quickly? I'll start by identifying those fit for other Kamen Rider systems, Gao Li said. As for the Infinity Stone series of memories, I already have candidates in mind. They moved fast. Gao Li personally approached the people he'd already identified, individuals who in the timeline of Gao Li's memories had become superheroes, but in this altered world had not yet done so because of his earlier butterfly effects. He believed some of these people were ideal for the stone memories. He thought of Stephen Strange for the time memory. The time stone had once been kept in the Eye of Agamotto. Even the Ancient One had used it to manipulate time. In the original timeline, Strange would become Sorcerer Supreme. He would be a natural match for manipulating time. He also looked to the Maximoff siblings for reality and mind memory. Though Gao Li lacked full knowledge of how they'd gained their powers originally, he had heard that Wanda was adept at altering reality, making her a likely fit for the reality memory. Pietro was a candidate for the mind memory. Gao Li himself had the best compatibility with the space memory and did not seek another. In fact, Gao Li's intuition proved correct. Shortly after Strange saved Ben Parker, he'd been in a car crash that left his hands with lingering damage. He began searching the world for a cure. Gao Li offered TPC's highest-level medical technology and assistance in exchange for Strange's cooperation as a Kamen Rider. Strange, desperate for help, agreed. After a series of tests, Strange's compatibility with the time memory was excellent, far better than Gao Li's earlier results. Gao Li grinned. Congratulations. From today on, you're Kamen Rider Time. Strange was stunned. The idea of controlling time upended everything he believed possible. It felt almost miraculous, and the shock outstripped even his anxiety about his injured hands. I think I could even reverse time, he said, excitement and hope tangled in his voice. Can I use it to heal my hands? For a moment, Strange hesitated, then brightened. Gao Li only shook his head. How far do you think you can reverse time? Strange thought for a few seconds. 40 minutes, maybe an hour. I haven't tested it yet. That's just how it feels when I transform. That's not just a feeling, that's the real limit, Gao Li explained. When you transform into Kamen Rider Time, your perception of time intensifies. Your sensations are reliable. Although your compatibility with the memory is higher than mine, my body has been modified to a degree you don't have. I can force my physiology to tolerate more side effects and push the memory's power beyond normal limits. In practice, your maximum reversal time isn't much longer than mine, and your hands weren't injured within that hour, so you can't use this ability to treat them now. The light in Strange's eyes dimmed, and he nodded slowly. Gao patted his shoulder. But don't worry, it doesn't have to be the time memory. I can modify biological systems. My biotech can help. I promised, and I don't break promises. After this war, I'll do everything I can to restore your hands. Satisfied that Strange understood, Gao moved on to check the Maximoff siblings. Their results were even better than he'd hoped. Wanda and Pietro's compatibility with the memory was exceptional, almost inevitable given their histories. In the original timeline, Wanda's awakening under the Mind Stone manifested as reality-warping power, which made the reality-aligned memory a perfect fit. Pietro, who had raw speed from the Mind Stone as well, translated into a memory-enhanced speed that was terrifying. According to Gowley's rough tests, Pietro's speed was only a hair slower than Accelerate Mode or Clock Up. Those armors are formidable speed systems, but Pietro could augment his velocity with mental abilities, and he didn't have their strict time limits. A pilot like that, able to move at near accelerate speeds and incapacitate enemies mentally, could silently neutralize entire squads or even cause a vanguard force to turn on itself. These three, Strange and the Maximoffs, were instant, high-end assets. Gowley's choices had been right. Thanos wouldn't give them much time. Under a sky normally studded with stars, today the heavens were masked by dark clouds. A doom-swept atmosphere hung over Earth. Thanos' Black Order descended like a plague on the cosmos. A fleet vast enough to blot the stars, each warship the color of ruin, a cold, inhuman presence. Their sheer numbers gave the impression of the sky itself being taken. Warnings from TPC had already put governments on edge. People everywhere watched broadcasts with clenched jaws. Heads of state gathered, remote conferenced into the TPC Joint Command Center, faces grim. Satellites Zaya and Ark followed Gowley's orders to the letter, vigilantly scanning the approach of the Black Order. The instant their sensors picked up the fleet, both relayed the information back. Time is short. Engage immediately, Nick Fury ordered from the command center. Before the Black Order could land, the TPC mobilized. Fighter jets and spacecraft, armed with laser and particle weapons, rose into the sky in clouds, streaking toward the frozen mass of enemy ships. In the vacuum above Earth, lasers and particle streams braided into a deadly light show. Explosions bloomed like terrible flowers, ship shields flaring and collapsing. The battlefield was lit by crossfire and debris. When ships rammed one another in suicidal moves, the sparks were both beautiful and disastrous. Thanos watched from his flagship, his expression unreadable. No matter who you are, no power will stand in my way. I will remake the universe in my hands, he said, calm as thunder, the Infinity Gauntlet glittering with cruel resolve. TPC pilots fought with desperate courage. One pilot barely cleared a Black Order vessel, his wing clipping the enemy hull and spraying sparks. Over the comms, pilots reassured each other, "Hold on, we can push them back. Don't give up," were Earth's last line. But the Black Order answered with ruthless brutality. Waves of purple energy from the gauntlet shattered squadron after squadron. Still, TPC didn't falter. Relying on advanced tech and iron will, they fought on, shields flickering as both sides reached a deadlock. Among the pilots was Akita, Asuka, a young Far East branch flyer, conscripted to this battle for his skill. Though inexperienced, he carried a fierce determination. "You think you can come and go as you please, treating Earth as your backyard?" He cursed through his comms as he wove his fighter through the crossfire, every shot precise. A Black Order warship suddenly lunged at him. His heart tightened, his reflexes quicker still. He slipped past the strike and fired back. Nick Fury's voice barked orders from the tactical room. "All combat groups, concentrate fire, break the enemy center." Fleets altered course, executing a concentrated strike. On the cosmic stage, firelight danced between ships, each flare a testament to courage and sacrifice. The outcome of this fight would determine not only Earth's fate, but the resistance to Thanos across the universe. Thanos, though, had no intention of being tied down in space. As Gao Li had predicted, the Black Order enjoyed a clear military advantage. Thanos left part of his fleet to hold the TPC at bay, while another force touched down on Earth. While traveling, Clock clasped the gauntlet and green light flickered. Found them, the locations of the other two Infinity Stones. He had not expected Gori Parker to place the other stones in an empty desert. Was it a trap? Thanos considered it briefly, then dismissed the thought as foolish resistance. The Black Order arrived and began to disembark, only to find Gao Li and his army already blocking their way. "You were prepared," Thanos observed. "Did you think you could ambush me? I saw it coming." Gao Li met his stare and laughed softly. "You thought you knew that I knew that you knew where the stones were, and that you set a trap for me. The truth is, I knew how far the Time Stone could see, and I used that against you." He pointed at the sky. Beyond the clouds, the faint flashes of the space battle still pulsed. Gao Li explained, "You may hold the Time Stone, but you haven't had it long enough to see every trick it can be used for." Thanos' composure finally showed cracks. "What are you getting at, Gori Parker?" Gao Li spread his hands. "What you saw was what I wanted you to see." "Now, Strange," he shouted. A sweep of emerald light unrolled across the heavens. Strange had channeled the time memory at its pinnacle. Together with Gao Li's Beyond Kamen Rider Kabuto tweaks, they were manipulating the timeline on a scale that rivaled the Time Stone itself. Gao Li had taken a page from the Ancient One, obscuring time with a show that would mislead an observer, and coupled that with his own talent for shielding segments of the timeline. When Thanos used the Time Stone to look ahead, he was seeing a constructed future. Strange had reversed the outer space battlefield by an hour. "Master, our fleet has returned to its starting point," Supergiant reported telepathically to Thanos, her voice tight. "Even with continuous jumps to compress time, it'll take nearly an hour to reach the surface." Thanos' face hardened. This was not a development he'd calculated. He guessed at Gao Li's limitation. "You didn't extend the reversal to here because you feared my interference with the Time Stone," he said. "That's your greatest mistake, Gori Parker. You might move the fleet in space, but the number of ships I sent to the surface is still more than enough to seize this planet." Gao Li looked up and smiled. "No, the opposite. Thanos, you and the portion of your army on Earth are isolated. This is our main battlefield. If they could kill Thanos within the hour before the space forces recompressed, they could win. A great battle was about to erupt." The forces Gao Li had assembled to confront Thanos were elite. Peter, Bruce, Tony, and the Victory Team alongside hardened veterans, an Iron Man suit army, Kamen Riders using various systems, and the Wakandan army led by King T'Challa. "Victory Team, go and pin Thanos down. T'Challa, you take Supergiant. The rest with me, we clear out the vanguard," Gao Li ordered. As he issued commands, Gao Li triggered the contingency already embedded in TPC's systems. Strange's hour-long reversal returned every fallen TPC pilot to life and restored the fleet to its pre-engagement positions. The automated directive he'd prepared sent them racing to the desert battlefield to support him. Time, for the moment, had been turned into their greatest weapon. Section 219. This way, Earth would have the advantage in numbers. Before the war, they'd even drawn up detailed tactical assignments. Peter would handle rescues across the battlefields, Strange would provide support, and so on. They'd split the fighting roughly into 4 sectors: east, west, south, and north, each with specialized units. Only the Eastern Front was different. It was Gao Li's battlefield alone, one man to turn the tide of an army. Gao Li had arranged it that way out of confidence and simplicity. Kabuto power, the Bee power, Drake power, Sassword power, all Zector combine, maximum hypercyclone. Gao Li, already transformed as Kamen Rider Kabuto, absorbed a torrent of tachyons into his system and fired a thick beam of light that swept across the Eastern Front. The beam erased nearly half of the vanguard forces on that front in an instant. After a brief cooldown, he fired another maximum hypercyclone. The glittering light dragon tore through the lines again. Explosions filled the sky with yellow sand, a wide swath of ground vitrified. When the dust settled, the eastern battlefield had been wiped clean. Hyperclock up? Activating hyperclock up, Gao Li scanned the rest of the theater. The west, south, and north fronts were holding, nothing catastrophic. Given heat dissipation limits, better to take out the hardest target first, he thought. He focused on Thanos. Seeing him, Gao Li's expression tightened. Thanos was confronting the entire Victory Team on his own, and appeared comfortable, even dominant. The Victory Team here wasn't just Steve, Bucky, Natasha, and Clint. Gao Li had sent the full roster, including Tony and Bruce. With their power, they ranked among the best in the universe, yet Thanos repeatedly suppressed them. Physical attacks were nullified by the Power Stone. The Soul Stone let him bypass armor and attack their souls. When the Reality Stone intervened, the minor setbacks the team managed to inflict vanished as if they'd never occurred. And with the Time Stone, Thanos could accelerate himself and launch multiple attacks within the same time window. It felt like Thanos was besieging the victory team, not the other way around. If I hadn't preloaded them with time memory defenses before the war, they'd have been finished a long time ago, Gao Li muttered. He had expected the Infinity Stone's threat and prepared accordingly. Only Infinity-level power could counter Infinity-level power. So he'd had Strange, Wanda, and Pietro, after transforming, leave residual defensive energy on the main combatants. That energy could short-circuit the stone's effects for a limited time, just as Gao Li had used to shield himself from Thanos' time stop at the TPC headquarters. It worked, but the protective energy decayed continuously. If they couldn't defeat Thanos before it faded, their chances would plummet. No hesitation. Gao Li closed in under Hyperclock Up, pressing the buttons on the 100-insect sword. Kabuto power, the B power, Drake power, Sassword power, all Zector combine, maximum Hyper Typhoon. When he was within 10 meters of Thanos, Gao Li manifested a towering greatsword of energy and brought it down. Thanos, already accelerated by the Time Stone, barely turned his head as a purple flash lit his Infinity Gauntlet. Buzz. The maximum Hyper Typhoon struck Thanos, but the Power Stone absorbed its destructive force and redirected it toward the victory team. Not so easy, huh? Gao Li, no stranger to manipulating time flow, reacted quickly. He flashed in front of the victory team and unleashed maximum Hyper Typhoon again, shaping it into a glittering, sky-piercing greatsword that met and canceled the energy shot by Thanos. Boom! Two titanic forces collided in a pillar of fire, temporarily splitting that sector of the battlefield. After using his ultimate repeatedly, the Kamen Rider Kabuto system overheated and Gao Li briefly de-transformed. Seamlessly, he switched to the Zo2 driver. Transform, 0 Tourize. Road to Glory, Lead to Growth, Change 1 to 2. Kamen Rider 02, it's never over. As he finished transforming, Thanos used the Reality Stone to clear the rising dust. The battlefield snapped clean. Thanos, still in control, didn't immediately attack. He looked down at Gao Li while the victory team took a chance to breathe. You planned and schemed painstakingly, Thanos said, but look at the results. The might of an individual can decide a battle. Against overwhelming power, all your preparations mean nothing. You sound very sure of yourself, Gao Li replied. Enough taunting. Thanos smiled cruelly. I don't want you to die without understanding. Only then will your despair please me. You lie, Gao Li said. I overestimated you. What I saw in Corvus Glaive's memory, that you massacred the universe to save it, was a lie, wasn't it? You dress your bloodlust in a cheap, proud philosophy. Thanos' chuckle deepened. How could you understand my ambition? I have waged wars across the North and South for years. Violence and slaughter aren't personal grudges alone. What I will do to your stubborn, annoying planet will give me great enjoyment. Like the Thanos who had once openly declared his goals after beating the original Avengers, he spoke his cruelty aloud. Your enjoyment ends now, Gao Li said, and with emotion attacked. Thanos snorted. Without your accelerated armor, you couldn't withstand my time stone. Talk is cheap. Thanos wasn't just talking. He seized the split second between combat and conversation and, accelerated by time, threw a thunderous punch at Gao Li. The strike was blindingly fast. No one on the victory team could react. Bang! A dull thud, but Thanos' pupils contracted. Gao Li had casually raised a hand and blocked the punch. He blocked it? Thanos thought, surprised. Could Gao Li's armor accelerate too? No, the motion looked like precognition. Gao Li had put his hand in the path of the attack before it arrived. Thanos, an experienced warrior, realized the truth. Gao Li was using Kamen Rider 02's near-future computational ability. He sneered. If it's precognition, that's manageable. No matter how much you can see, you still need time to act. I'll deny you even that. The time stone flared again. Thanos accelerated to an unimaginable degree. To him, everyone else seemed almost frozen. Strange's time memory protections prevented him from applying the stone's effects to the victory team and Gao Li, but he could channel them through himself. Die! In that super-accelerated state, Thanos clenched his fist and the Soul Stone flared, an attack meant to strike the soul and bypass armor. But when his fist connected, Gao Li was gone. What? Thanos' pupils constricted. Gao Li had vanished from the spot and reappeared behind him. The instant he materialized, he delivered a lightning-quick kick to the back of Thanos' head. 0-2 Big Bang. A massive impact detonated in Thanos' head, the hub of thought, and it immediately robbed him of coherent thinking. Unable to comprehend what had happened, Thanos flew backward, bleeding from his 7 orifices. Instinct still governed his body. He muscle-memorized a fist clench. The reality stone pulsed, and Thanos subconsciously altered his injured state, overlaying a new reality to patch himself. Gao Li flickered again and, at almost point-blank range, kicked Thanos directly in the face. 0-2 Big Bang. This blow struck Thanos' fragile face and did even greater damage. He fell, now spewing blood from all 7 orifices in a far more severe injury. The exchanges had happened so fast the victory team could scarcely process them. They watched him being kicked away and hit the ground amid dust and blood. This is... Tony's eyes went wide. Gao Li had just accomplished alone what their entire team hadn't managed. Then Tony looked at the 0-2 armor and understood, at least roughly, how. As Thanos had suspected, no matter how fast the 0-2 armor's future calculating was, it still required decision time and action time. An extreme time acceleration could overwhelm that. But 0-2's true ultimate lay in its quantum leap capability. Gao Li could jump across countless possible outcomes. If a possibility had already been decided and the action completed, Gao Li could skip that span of time in the space-time and arrive directly at the result. The first kick had been executed that way. When Thanos used the Reality Stone to overwrite the outcome, Gao Li simply quantum leaped into another possibility, effectively bypassing Thanos' reality modification. Who do you think spent the most time studying the 2 Infinity Stones you took? Gao Li sneered as he landed. You would dare to contest me with the Time Stone and Reality Stone. Among gods and ancient beings, the answer might be different, but Gao Li wasn't shy about his own preparations. No one who first encountered those stones understood the Time and Reality Stones better than he did. The Time Stone had its limits, so did the Reality Stone. Gao Li's eyes gleamed with the certainty of someone who'd prepared for exactly this moment. The battle for the Eastern Front, and perhaps the outcome of the war, pivoted on what he intended to do next. Section 220. This limit was not the Reality Stone's own constraint, and therefore had nothing to do with how strongly it was activated. It was a limit of the world itself. A timeline has a certain elasticity. The Time Stone can reverse time to a degree, but if it is used repeatedly in a short span, it can exceed that elasticity and collapse the timeline. The same applied to the world's reality. Thanos could not keep rewriting reality over and over in rapid succession without risking his personal reality snapping. That would be suicide. Gori Parker. I'll admit it. You are the most troublesome, difficult opponent I've ever faced. Thanos wiped blood from his face and rose, his pallor deepening from purple to something like black. But I won't be careless again. Come on. Gori looked back, met the eyes of every member of the victory team, and charged first. Let's go. Okay. Steve, Bucky, Natasha, Clint, Tony, and the Hulk surged after him, launching themselves at Thanos. The clash was picked up by satellite surveillance and fed back to the frontline command hall. Nick Fury, as the deputy director of the TPC and the wartime commander on the ground, watched the feed with a rare swell of feeling. This was the lineup he had once imagined, the Avengers reborn in another form when the original plan had appeared dead in the cradle. As the battle intensified, purple storm clouds rolled over the endless desert. A sandstorm roared in like a mounted charge, Thanos' silhouette flickering in and out of sight amid the dust, his eyes burning with unrelenting hunger for victory. He reveled in the fight. Facing such a formidable foe exhilarated him. On the other side, Gao Li's eyes were like deep space, countless futures flickering through his calculations. Steve stood like a mountain, muscles gleaming in the sun, the living symbol of strength. Natasha's armor glinted, as if it might split into countless metallic locusts at any second. Clint, equipped in various Gatling armors, moved with a cheetah's agility and the brunt force of a rhino. Bucky clenched his fists. Compared to his machine-armed past, he now possessed an even more terrifying power. Tony's nano-armor reshaped itself into weapons of extraordinary force while the roar of artillery shook the desert. Hulk bellowed and pounded his chest, raw fury sending shockwaves that kicked up clouds of dust. Thanos struck first, clenching the Infinity Gauntlet and throwing the air itself like a twisted net. Time's gears accelerated, and his figure blinked away and back, trailing after images. Gao Li, however, did not falter. His eyes traced a future moment, counting quantum possibilities that flickered and fell into place. He dodged and countered with uncanny predictive precision so that not even his shadow was grazed by Thanos. Rider punch! Steve's strength erupted, his fist drawing a bright arc as it smashed into Thanos and sent a visible shockwave rolling outward. Thanos absorbed the shockwave with the Power Stone and responded with a tremendous purple energy wave. Boom! Steve was blasted away. Natasha stepped in, unleashing her metallic swarm. Her armor decomposed into locust-sized metal insects that flapped, forming a dense, corrosive attack pattern that ripped petal-like scars into the sand. "This is dangerous. Don't touch it rashly," Thanos muttered. He couldn't afford damage to the gauntlet. He struck back with a psychic assault, a soul-crushing wave meant to render anyone unconscious. Natasha staggered, but she held steady, enduring the psychic blow with iron will. In some parallel worlds, Natasha bore a noble soul that could have lifted Mjolnir. Her resilience surprised Thanos for a heartbeat, but he had no time to dwell on it. Clint roared into action, becoming a whirlwind of gunfire. Bang, 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 bang! Each bullet was an outpouring of rage, molten fire and ice bent to his will, striking as one. Thanos' reality modification cooldown ended at that moment. He waved a hand, and the invading fire and ice dissolved into harmless dust. He then swung a colossal fist at Tony, who darted aside and fired a beam at Thanos' face. The Power Stone shimmered, drawing the energy into an unseen grip, until Hulk, a streak of green lightning, charged in and interrupted the channel. Thanos raised another hand and conjured an invisible wall. Hulk slammed into it with an earth-shaking roar. Thanos looked coldly over his opponents. "Do you honestly think this can stop me? So many have tried to stop me. They all failed. Who cares about you? Take this." Bucky had been gathering strength away from the main clash. When a brief opening appeared, he unleashed a crushing blow. Rider punch! It was a mountain-moving strike, yet Thanos only stepped back a whisper, as though what faced him was not a living man, but an immovable fortress. But Bucky was not alone. Steve and Gao Li pressed the assault. Under their sustained blows, Thanos was driven back again and again, his bones creaking within him. Boom, boom, boom. The attacks kept coming. Natasha and Clint's combined onslaught, metal, energy, sand, smashed into Thanos' defenses like a cataclysm. Their fight was a natural disaster given flesh, boiling over the brink of apocalypse. Gao Li continuously calculated futures where they won, but he understood, too, that the fiercer the clash, the more unknowns it revealed. Steve poured every ounce of perseverance he had into the fight and vowed silently never to yield. Natasha and Clint fought with iron faith, searching for a way to survive the roaring maw of destruction. Bucky's composure was the last vigilant guardian in a world that felt like it was falling apart, filling gaps in everyone's assault. Dust rose, energy sprayed, explosions thundered. The battle had become mythical. The wind no longer revealed a clear horizon. The sand merely bore witness to their struggle. Yet despite the intensity, the fight edged toward a stalemate. With Gao Li added, the victory team was no longer being overwhelmed. Under his leadership, they could steadily chip away at Thanos. But Thanos was doing the same. It was only a question of which side would break first. Rumble, a multicolored Bifrost bridge, descended from the sky, thicker than any before, as if it contained an army. When the light faded, the Asgardian host stood arrayed on the desert. At Gao Li's invitation, and in gratitude for Earth giving us shelter, I, in the name of the King of Asgard, declare. Thor raised his fist. Asgard enters the war. Chapter 236. All assemble, all united. The Asgardian standard snapped in the desert wind. Thor's warriors, fighting alongside the elite troops Gao Li had previously assembled, turned the tide. Vanguard monsters surged like a living sandstorm, but the Asgardian ranks held like iron. Their armor flashed, every sword strike, every shield bash fell like a meteor, lighting up the sea of sand. Gao Li's forces matched them step for step, forming dense formations and striking with disciplined ferocity. Their tactics were razor-sharp, their coordinated assaults overwhelming even the vanguard's perfected biology. Rumble, rumble, rumbled. Thor wielded Gungnir, Odin's heirloom. Each sweep and thrust rang with thunder. His burning gaze and shaking power made vanguard beasts quail. Asgard might be gone, but Thor would not allow Midgard to suffer the same fate. He streaked through the sky like lightning, and at every flash of Gungnir, hordes of vanguard fell. The weapon moved as if alive, releasing endless force. Other Asgardian gods fought with their own methods. They might not match Thor's raw might, but they sowed chaos among the vanguard and opened the way for victory. Above, the sky burned with battle. TPC's flight squadron had arrived under Gauli's command, weaving among the Black Order's ships. Fighter jets darted like lightning, firing beams and engaging Black Order craft in a desperate aerial ballet that threatened to rend the very heavens. The pilots' courage and skill shone. They defended peace with their lives. The Black Order's ships loomed like harbingers of death, their artillery pouring down mercilessly. Yet TPC's squadron refused to be outmatched. Their equipment and performance stood toe-to-toe with the invaders. Gunfire and explosions thundered as formations coordinated precise, daring maneuvers that repeatedly thwarted enemy strikes. Their tenacity became the battle's engine and a symbol of hope, the hope that victory was still possible. The reason the fight had become so fiercely contested so early was that Asgard's army, Gauli's elites, and the TPC Air Force were united against the Dark Tide, defending Earth. Earth had become Asgard's new home. That was the reward for Gauli's earlier kindness. "Thor, over here, that fight's decided. This is the main point," Gauli shouted through the chaos. "Understood," Thor replied with a sweep of lightning, Gungnir cleaving a path toward the battlefield where Gauli and the others faced Thanos. Although he wasn't wielding Stormbreaker, the weapon he'd used against Hela on the Bifrost, Thor's awakened power still posed a grave threat to Thanos. With Thor's arrival, the balance slowly tipped toward Earth. Thanos cursed under his breath. The stalemate had not been a simple 50-50. It had forced him to exhaust himself. He could not afford to withdraw without being torn apart by Gauli and the victory team. Thor's entrance felt like the last weight that might break him. Supergiant. Thanos had to call for reinforcements. He had wanted the Black Order's fleet to unleash a ground barrage, but their air forces were fully engaged with TPC. The only relatively idle combatant was Supergiant, who fought Black Panther one-on-one. Black Panther had the resilience of an indestructible Captain America, tough, high HP, but in raw combat power, he was outclassed by the Black Order. His survival until now had been bought with vibranium armor that barely kept him alive. A counterkill against Supergiant? Not something to hope for.